righty, everybody. Welcome on into the Central Committee stream with your host, Mike from PA. We are finally live. Sorry about that, chat. I got distracted right before I went live. And one of the problems that I have in my life is that let me throw in the earbuds. Hold on. One of the problems I have in my life is how do I put this? I don't like leading people. I don't. And the reason why is because I have a very tightly contained misanthropic urge that the less I have to manage people, the less I have to lead them, the more I can contain it. But I'm just a guy and I could just do my work and talk to other people and advise someone who listens to my advice. I don't actually want to do the management because I'm mean. And I don't like to do it because I'm going to like, I have a hard time understanding other people's behavior. It's just true. Maybe it's autism. I don't know. So when I put in a management position, I'm not cuddly enough. And so I don't like it because I can tell that I'm like going to make the other people feel bad. And so I don't want to do that. And I'm used to a very military style version of leadership because I grew up, I don't know if you know this, chat, in a military family. My dad was a colonel. We had high accountability, no excuses. We weren't allowed to use emotions as an excuse ever. We had to have a rationale for why we did what we did. And we had to own up with full accountability when we made a mistake. It was very different than the way regular people live. So when I'm I just intuitively think like that. I'm intuitively very like, what were you thinking? And people melt in that kind of environment. And so, you know, I was taught to persevere through stress, you know, these kind of things. And so in leadership positions, I'm just like, I'm raging 99% of the time in my head. And I'm like containing myself. And I'm like, I should not be the leader right now. I should not be the leader right now. It explains the rate of anti-DSA union takes. No, not only do I agree with that, I actually think if you disagree, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. In a membership group, you don't need a union. It's a membership-led organization. You don't need a union against what? The membership? The membership that voluntarily pays is donating? Like, what are you unionizing against? That's insane. Against the bosses that are fighting to end exploitation? Like, what? Union, just because something says union doesn't mean it's good. Cop unions, meaningless wrecker staff unions that have a political line and, you know, if a union has political opinions about the membership organization, that's just basically trying to privilege certain members over others. It's crazy. I know how to lead. I know what I need to do for my leadership style. I need to have a chief of staff. Okay, this is actually true. I need to find a chief of staff. A chief of staff is the leader of the staff. It's the most senior ranked person, and they interact the most with the principal, and they enact the principal's desires. That's what I need. I need somebody who knows how to handle my specific leadership style and can be the frontline supervisor of people that are underneath them, right? That's what I need. So like when stuff is brought up to me, it's stuff that requires executive decisions. You know what I mean? Not just like low level management. I don't want to do low level supervising. I hate that. Should the UAW staff have a union? Staff unions are a very complicated space, and I'm in favor of them generally. However, with the recognition that a staff union is not the same thing, and that the staff union cannot use maximalist strategies against the union. Like the idea that, oh, you oppose some demand the staff union is making, therefore you're a scab or some shit. This is ultra wrecker behavior. You're being trapped by ultra wrecker behavior. You know that people have, like, some of the most important union attorneys in this country have been called like union busters by some of these ultras before because they were like, no, I think you should work more than 20 hours a week. So like, you know, let's calm down. Did the DSA staff unit try to overthrow the DSA/DSA members? Well, they basically wanted all the money DSA had to go to them. You know, like, nah, I don't think so. Currently reading about rank and file movements in New York City during the late 60s, early 70s. This shit is disheartening and hopeful, real emotional. The answer is it's disheartening.
No one is telling you the real reason of why Israel attacked Iran. And
I'm just clicking links now. I've just come on to stream and it seems like I'm missing something. Can chat help? No, they can't. They don't know what they're talking about, and it's pointless to even talk about. Let's just say I've been involved in union politics, real unions, for over a decade. There are bad unions. There are bad leaders in unions. Now, I'm generally very pro-union on this stream, but if you're going to get specific, there are certain circumstances where people suck shit, even though they're part of a union. It's like any other human organization. You know, it can be corrupted. It can be misused. Mike, are you going to review the latest Marist poll? Probably, but Marist is really bad at polling. They're like one of the worst pollsters. Like, politics doesn't ever end. You know, like that's... Okay, my first reaction to any poll of the mayor's race is that the mayor's race and the population of people that are going to vote in it is going to be completely unlike any other year. All right? This is going to have a completely different type of person who votes. All right? Like, this is going to be a completely different than your standard year. So if you're going by, say, like the last cycle, you're going to be wildly off. Because there was no strong progressive than the last cycle, and they were not unified. So if you go by that, and this is where analysis trumps the data bro guy. I know for a fact, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the population of people that are going to be voting in this primary is going to be significantly different than last cycle. Why? Because Zohran is a completely different type of candidate who is absolutely blown up in all sorts of spaces that weren't even that important 4 years ago. And these so the methodology of like, oh, you know, we're going to screen out low likelihood voters. You have no idea who those are. It said all potential respondents were screened for age, residence in New York City, and confirmation of party registration as a Democrat. Survey questions are available in English or Spanish. Samples were randomly selected from the L2 voter file of New York City registered Democrats based on voters' likelihood of participating in the Democratic primary for mayor. How are they deriving that? How are you deriving it? There's two ways to do it. There's what's known as a hard likely voter screen or a soft likely voter screen. In elections where there is a progressive populist who is popular, hard likely voter screens are wrong. You need to do soft likely voter screens. I don't know how they do it. So they don't say. They just say they screen based on likelihood. Well, likelihood is not some sort of like fixed variable that you know. So that right off the bat is always the thing that I look for. The other thing is primary polling is very, very uncertain and is full of errors. And it's not just me coping. I'm not doing any cope. I'm not doing unskew the polls. I'm telling you why these polls are going to be wrong. Okay, like this isn't, and it's not like my opinion. Hold on 1 second. All right. The old people vote and Grandma Killer is winning 45 plus. Yes, because they only watch old media. They watch TV. That's why. Like, we have this generational gap that starts with Gen X. Gen X and later are overwhelmingly TV people. And so their opinions are shaped primarily by mainstream media, or in some cases, Facebook. Old boomers still trust the media. And like, anyway, as I was saying before, leadership is hard, and knowing that you have issues with it, knowing that you have problem, it's your problem, it's not the people you're trying to lead's problem. That's what makes me not want to do it, is because I need to be better. And it sucks. It sucks to be like, all right, I have to learn how to like grow up. You know what I mean? But I need to just get over myself and be like, okay. Because a lot of the times when you're mad, you're really mad at yourself. Like when I criticize people, half of the criticism is implicitly pointed back at myself. Because it's like, if I'm unhappy with a product that I asked for, part of the problem is I didn't communicate well enough. I didn't establish a system. I didn't, you know, advocate for my own interests better. It's my own fault. So whenever I get angry, I try to give myself 30 minutes to like cool down and then go, okay, where did I fuck up here before I talk to somebody else? And that is very hard to do. And I don't always succeed. Okay. What is their, okay, so hold on. Where is their likely voter screen? Okay, here we go. They say household income of less than 50,000 will be 30% and not college graduate will be 41%. And that the voters will be 17% Jewish, 26% Catholic, 22% Protestant, and 26% no religion. Other 10%. That's crazy. Other. When you're doing new things, that's never going to be perfect the first few tries. So true. So true. So true. That's one of the things I hate about myself. Like one of the biggest flaws you can have as a person is being a perfectionist. Perfectionism is a massive, it actually may be one of the worst flaws you could have. I'm not saying wanting nice things or wanting things to be good is bad. I'm saying being a perfectionist is bad, because I think perfectionism is oftentimes cope for not doing shit. And I include myself in this. I call myself a perfectionist derogatory. The things in my life that I've been the most successful in are the ones where I just say, fuck it, good enough. Like, for example, this stream. The only reason that this stream is successful is because one day I was like, this is good enough. And then I just kept doing that. And I never fixed anything. But because I kept doing shit, it kept succeeding. So I need to employ that energy into my life. And I love the people that are helping me and supporting me. And I'm just such a shitty leader sometimes. But some of the parts of being a good leader is not criticizing yourself in front of the people you're trying to lead, which is my biggest problem. One of my biggest flaws as a leader is I criticize myself in front of the people that I'm leading, which is absolutely terrible. You should never do that. Because being a good part, one of the biggest parts of being a good leader is people thinking you're a good leader.
All right, everyone, I just voted early. Obviously, Zohran Mamdani, #1 ranked, then Brad Lander, then Michael Blake, then Adrian Adams, and then Zellner Myrie. That's my ranking. It's really important that you don't rank Cuomo and rank all 5 slots. I also voted for Jumaane Williams, again for public advocate, and Justin Brannan for city comptroller. That's my ballot. Let's go. Let's get this done. Don't rank Cuomo. Rank Zohran #1.
Rank Zohran. And, you know, I don't really care after that as long as you don't rank Cuomo. You could probably make sure you should probably put Brad Lander #2 because he seems cool. Other than that, like, it doesn't really matter. Like, all those other people kind of suck shit, to be honest. All right, chat. Israel is running out of pores. Okay, spelled it right, I think. The best news I've seen all week. Exclusive. Israel is running low on defensive interceptor. Official says a shortage of aerial interceptors has set off the scramble to augment Israel's defenses. So, chat, I need to get myself a chief of staff. I've decided that I need to get myself a chief of staff. This is legitimately true. I really do. I need a marsh. Exactly. You mean a producer? It's the same thing. Producer, manager, chief of staff, whatever. It's the same shit. Chief of staff is just what you call it in politics. In like media, they call it a manager. In politics, they call it a chief of staff. Like, it really depends on what you're talking about. I don't want to call somebody my manager because no, they're not. Fuck off. I feel like the fact that people call someone who's basically their assistant the manager in the show business is fucking cringe. I hate it. How likely is this information to just be bait? I mean, there's always a chance that there's deception being done, but it makes sense. If you understand military equipment and you understand the way these systems work, and if you understand what aero interceptors actually are, then this makes sense. Now, do you know what any of those things are? Do you understand any of those things? I understand them well enough to interpret the news. And the answer is just so you know, aero interceptors are the Israeli version of the American THAAD system, which is Theater High Altitude Air Defense Interceptors. These are interceptor missiles that go extremely high altitude to intercept ballistic missiles. And so to do that requires an extremely advanced detection systems, incredibly advanced propulsion systems, and they are incredibly hard and expensive to build. You're basically going into fucking space, all right? And so launching into space is extremely expensive, especially when you're trying to intercept another rocket. So arrow interceptors are extremely expensive and hard to make. So it makes sense that Israel is running low. This was just posted by the Wall Street Journal. Iran has more missiles than Israel has interceptors. Now what?
For days, Israel's defenses have largely held up against Iran's missile attacks.
I like this title
but
better than mine.
There's a growing concern that Israel is burning through its defensive weapons. And its arrow...
By the way, editors, quick note. What we're about to talk about would be a really good, like, TikTok short. Just so you know, because, you know, a lot of people are really passionate about this conflict. And this is, like, kind of both factual, wonkish, and anti-Israel. So it's good cope. So this is something that a lot of people would be interested in seeing. Just as a heads up of what I would consider to be a good video to maybe create and post immediately. You know, that's just my intuition. Maybe I'm wrong, but that intuitively, my understanding of TikTok's general predisposition against Israel, the fact that this is breaking news, and the fact that this is like wonkish information that most people don't know, so they would want to hear about it and learn about it. I'm just saying, I'm just explaining what might be a good short. Israel knows the constraints. That's why they don't intercept missiles. They think won't it strike important areas? Yeah, but it's been 5 days. They're running out.
For days, Israel's defenses have largely held up against Iran's missile attacks.
And what's really crazy is that we're paying for this. I want you to understand that the United States of America is the one who is paying for the Arrow system and the THAAD system. The THAAD system is supposed to be our defense against nuclear missiles, rogue nuclear missiles. And we transported 2 of our 7 THAAD interceptor systems to Israel, and they run $1 billion each. And I think they cost between $20 and $40 million per shot. Think about that.
There's a growing concern that Israel is burning through its defensive weapons. And its Arrow interceptors, which play a key role in taking out Iran's ballistic missiles, are in short supply, according to a U.S. official. The United States, which has been helping Israel shoot down threats, is also expending its munitions. The U.S. official and analysts familiar with the numbers say that Iran has more missiles than Israel and the U.S. have interceptors.
Israel and the U.S. have interceptors. Israel and the U.S. have interceptors. And we're playing a game where we're shooting a $20 million interceptor or $40 million interceptor against a, say, $200,000 rocket. We are getting absolutely owned.
Raising concerns about Israel's ability to defend itself long term. So here's what the interceptor.
Why are there only 7? It seems beneficial to have more. Why aren't there more billion-dollar ultra high altitude interceptors? Well, the answer is diminishing returns. Because if there was a strategic thermonuclear exchange, say that China and the United States got into a nuclear war, it's impossible to intercept all their nukes. So it would just be, so the more you build, it's just waste. So you're spending billions upon billions upon billions of dollars for a system that wouldn't even work. Meanwhile, do you know what China's spending money on? Drones and missiles. So instead of overspending on these defensive Star Wars era technologies that have a 50% interception rate, you just spend that same money on building massive amounts of launchers and missiles and drones. And so you will have the advantage in a conflict. That's why we don't buy more of them, because they're a complete waste of fucking money. Do you know what's the best way to avoid war? Not spending so much on fucking war.
All means for Israel, its allies, and the broader Middle East. Israel uses different systems to provide a multi-layered defense of its airspace. The Arrow 3 is considered the crown jewel of this network. With a range of about 1,500 miles, the Arrow 3 is used to counter long-range ballistic missiles, including those that fly above the Earth's atmosphere. Arrow 3 has been critical in countering attacks from Iran and Yemen, and it can intercept threats before they cross into Israel's airspace. The Arrow 2, an older version of the system, is also used to intercept short to medium-range ballistic missiles. Then there's David Sling, primarily used to counter medium-range ballistic missiles, among other threats. And finally, the Iron Dome, which is used to shoot down short-range threats like rockets from Gaza. Experts say the Iron Dome is not playing a major role in this current conflict with Iran, and that the Arrow systems and David Sling have been key. Even though some missiles have slipped through, Israel's layered defense has proven to be extremely effective. Israel says its interception rate for ballistic...
By the way, they're not explaining... I hate the mainstream media. They're so bad at this. The United States also has Aegis destroyers and our the THAAD system that we have sent to... We're in this war. We have sent them to Israel. We're sitting there intercepting rockets as well. And Aegis destroyers are... let me just pull it up for you real quick, chat. Aegis destroyers are have ballistic missile defenses as well. So the Aegis BMD, ballistic missile defense capabilities, are being developed as part of NATO missile defense system. So we have these like destroyers or guided missile cruisers that fire extremely expensive interceptor rockets as well. That's what you saw at the beginning of the video. They showed the U.S. is firing from ships.
Missiles is about 90%, and of the 370 missiles fired by Iran in recent days, about 30 have made an impact as of June 17th. But as Tom Carrico, the director of the Missile Defense Project at CSIS, put it to me, the capability is not the question. It's the capacity that matters. And capacity could be a huge problem, because arrows play a key role in shooting down not just Iran's ballistic missiles, but also threats from Iranian proxy groups like the Houthis in Yemen. In a statement, the Israeli Defense Forces said, "The IDF is prepared and ready to handle any scenario. Unfortunately, we are unable to comment on matters related to munitions." Israel doesn't talk about how many interceptors it has, because if its enemies knew that number, they would know how many missiles to fire at the country. The company that makes the Arrow interceptors, IAI, did not respond to requests for comment. Back in December, Israel's defense ministry struck a deal with IAI to make more Arrow 3 interceptors. However, the Arrows are complex missiles that cost more than $2 million apiece and take time to produce. Analysts say, in general, defensive weapons are harder and more expensive to make than offensive weapons because they have to be more sophisticated and more precise than the missiles they're designed to take out. Plus, in some cases, you have to fire several interceptors in order to neutralize a missile. That's why Israel has been focused on taking out Iran's missile and drone capabilities on the ground.
Yeah, that's why they've been... Exactly. That's why they attacked, because they don't have the capability to withstand a counter-strike. And the truth about the situation is that Israel has practiced one of the key strategies for a militarily inferior force to win a war. And love or hate Israel, and I hate Israel, they have done it masterfully, which is called defeat in detail. Defeat in detail means that when you are outnumbered, what you do is you concentrate your forces and you go on the offense against a superior enemy who has to defend a large amount of territory, and you defeat their defensive forces and you get local superiority. And that's what Israel has done. They fought Gaza alone, then they fought Hezbollah alone, then they were fighting the Houthis alone, and Iran remained hanging back. And because the so-called axis of resistance was not actually committed to each other's defenses, it has led to Israel being able to target each one individually and take each one individually out, or reduce or degrade their capability tremendously. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that Iran did not recognize that Israel was going down this strategy and did not counter it. If Iran had coordinated with Hezbollah and Hamas and the Houthis to fully attack Israel all at once, then Israel would not have been able to do what it has been successfully able to do. Now, the reason why the Iranians didn't do that is because they were worried that the United States of America would enter the war on Israel's side. And they very may well have done that. So maybe Iran's strategy wasn't wrong. But the reason why Israel has been able to see the successes it's had is because it has isolated each individual element and focused on them in sequence. And now they're on Iran.
Its aerial campaign. The IDF says it has dismantled more than 1/3 of Iran's missile launchers. But Iran has still been able to launch volleys of missiles at Israel. The United States, aware of Israel's interceptor capacity issues for months, has been augmenting the country's defenses.
We are full of gratitude and thanks for the defensive systems that the United States has put in play.
There's the ground.
But the only reason, okay, we're finally getting into it. The only reason Israel has been able to do the genocide in Gaza is because of the United States. I'll say that one more time. It's not that we're just giving them money. It's not just that we're protecting them at the UN. We are actively fighting in the war. We are giving them intelligence we collect. We're spying on their targets. We are flying drones to give them aerial reconnaissance. We are actually intercepting anybody who fights back against Israel. We're attacking the Houthis in Yemen. Like, we are in this war, and we have been in this war since day one. We are also perpetuators of the genocide. There is no gap between us and Israel. I think a lot of the anger at Israel is a fact that people are not reckoning with the content of the they're not reckoning, excuse me. I think a lot of the anger at Israel is really misplaced. It should be anger at the United States as well. People are so intense in their hatred of Israel. Meanwhile, the United States is doing all the same shit. Our hands are just as bloody. And that includes both parties, Democrats and Republicans, with few exceptions, like AOC and Zohran Mamdani. Get it right. You have to get it right, chat. Except for those few exceptions, most Democrats have either been silent or outright supportive of the U.S. doing this genocide. Let's learn about the THAAD system.
Based THAAD system, which can intercept missiles inside or outside the atmosphere, and the U.S. has sent Navy ships into the region, which can counter missiles with SM-2, SM-3, and SM-6 interceptors. Plus, fighter jets can shoot down drones, missiles, and other threats.
And I can say with authority that they have saved hundreds, perhaps thousands of lives over the past 4 days since Iran has been firing these ballistic missiles into our population centers.
So there you have it, chat. Without the United States, Israel would be suffering severe consequences from their war of aggression. And it's the United States that is giving Netanyahu the capacity to continue this aggression because we're shielding Israel, the retaliation for their aggression. So we are part of this.
But U.S. interceptors aren't unlimited either. For example, defense documents show that the U.S. has only procured about 600 THAAD interceptors to date. So what does all of this mean for the current conflict in the Middle East?
They're 15 million per.
Remember, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. It's very simple.
Analysts say that whatever.
Good short for people trying a compilation of Mike trying to say non-American things. You mean anti-American? I mean, I'm not anti-American. I'm anti-genocided Gaza. If you interpret that as anti-American, then that says more about what you think about America than it says about me. I am fundamentally at my core not anti-American. I'm anti-Americans' imperialism. And this is a long tradition in America. The Anti-Imperialism League was started by Mark Twain. Okay? Anti-imperialism is just as much of a tradition in America than motherfucking imperialism. In fact, I would argue more of a tradition. We've been down this road of global domination since Harry Truman, the worst president we ever had. They meant pronouncing non-American names. Oh yeah, true.
Happens, officials need to act fast to end the war because the U.S. and Israel can't afford to sit and intercept missiles for an extended period of time.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why they are trying to get a ceasefire with Iran. The reason why is because eventually these interceptors are going to run out. And the capacity to replace them is not there. So they're desperately trying to destroy Iran's capability to fire these missiles before the missiles run out. You guys were imperialists before Truman, though? Very true. Israel is running low on defensive aerial interceptors, according to a U.S. official, raising concern about the country's ability to counter long-range ballistic missiles from Iran if the conflict isn't resolved soon. The U.S. has been aware of the capacity problems for months, the official said. And Washington has been augmenting Israel's defenses with systems on the ground, on sea, and in the air. Since the conflict escalated in June, the Pentagon has sent more missile defense assets into the region, and now there is concern about U.S. burning through interceptors as well. Neither the U.S. nor the Israelis can continue to sit and intercept missiles all day, said Tom Kerr-Co, director of the Missile Defense Project at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. The Israelis and their friends need to move with all deliberate haste to do whatever needs to be done because we cannot afford to sit and play catch. CNN reports the USS Ford Carrier Strike Group is set to deploy to Europe near the Middle East next week. We are going to war with Iran. We are going to war with Iran. We need to be preparing. We need to start organizing these anti-war protests. Unbelievable. Unfucking believable, man. This is gonna happen. Chat, this is gonna happen. Rocket science is hard. I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna say it loud, and I'm gonna say it proud. If the United States of America loses an aircraft carrier because we go into an undeclared war on Iran that the American people do not support, that doesn't change my position one iota. If America is inserting ourselves into a war zone and fighting on behalf of one of the illegal belligerents and an aircraft carrier gets sunk, so fucking be it. I still don't support the war. Israel is literally a national security threat to the United States, dude. Israel is the #1 national security threat to the United States. #1. Israel's oppression of Palestinians and Israel's interference with its neighbors and Israel's support of nations like apartheid South Africa have been one of the right-wing fascist dictatorships in South America. Israel has been one of the key problem causers in the entire world for decades. If Israel was dismantled, it would be the single greatest advancement of global peace than any other thing possible. Israel is America's #1 national security threat, bar none. Bar none. Look at that. The interceptor failed and crashed right back into the city. It's so frustrating. It's so aggravating.
For many shortcomings could have potentially life-threatening consequences for American service members. In your confirmation hearing, I expressed my deep reservations about your qualifications to run the DoD. I also made it clear that no board of directors in the world would hire someone with so little experience to run a large business, much less the Department of Defense, where American lives are on the line regularly. For this reason, in addition to some concerns we had about character, I ultimately opposed your nomination. And unfortunately, my reservations have become reality. I know my colleagues have touched on some of these issues, but to briefly summarize, you have failed to set the example, or lead from the front, as you like to say. And this includes prompting a leadership and oversight vacuum at the department by firing qualified uniform leaders without cause, creating loyalty tests and leak investigations that have led to 5 of your senior advisors resigning or being fired, sharing classified military details on an unsecure app during operations in Yemen that included unauthorized individuals on at least 2 separate occasions, and revoking the DoD personal protection detail for both Secretary of Defense Mark Esper and the former chairman of Joint Chiefs Mark Milley, putting their safety at risk while they are still under threat from Iran. We have seen time and time again how your conduct, lack of personal responsibility, are harming readiness, reputation, and professionalism of our military. At a time where Israel and Iran are in open conflict and our adversaries in Russia and China will exploit any weaknesses, unfortunately, my worst fears about your leadership shortfalls, unfortunately, have been realized. Secretary Hesketh, I firmly believe that accountability from leadership is vital in all sectors, not just in the military, and demonstrating to your subordinates that everyone plays by the same rules helps to build trust and open communications within your team. And those two things are extremely important. And I know that you share my desire to ensure that we're holding our senior leaders accountable for actions. And during your nomination hearing, you stated, quote, accountability is coming because everybody in this room knows if you are a rifleman and you lose your rifle, they are throwing the book at you, end of quote. You also said that leadership has been unwilling to take accountability, and I couldn't agree more on how important accountability is. As we all know, at the request of this committee, the Department of Defense Inspector General launched an investigation into your use of Signal, an unclassified commercially available messaging application to discuss information pertaining military actions in Yemen. So given your focus on accountability, how will you demonstrate this accountability to the men and women in the U.S. military if the Inspector General finds that you improperly disclosed information?
That assessment is pending at this time.
That is a hypothetical question, but the gentleman's time has expired.
I think your answer is clear. You are not going to be held accountable.
Thank you very much, Senator Peters. Senator Mullen.
Talk about accountability. I wonder who was held accountable for the disastrous withdrawal out of Afghanistan, where 13 soldiers died and we left thousands of Americans behind underneath Secretary Austin's lead. Did one person get held accountable during that time? I don't know of anybody that got held accountable for Afghanistan withdrawal. But let's talk about that. And let's talk about the turmoil to which my colleagues on the other side the dais wants to talk about. Let's talk about that turmoil. Underneath Secretary Austin, who was a general, by the way, you had the lowest morale measured in our military history. You had retention absolutely disastrous. You had recruitment that wasn't even meeting lowered standards that you guys lowered. But let me see the contrast. Now, we have the highest morale that's been measured in decades in the military. We have recruiting numbers that are exceeding expectations that we've had. We have our enemies that fear us once again, and our allies that love us because they can trust us. But that's not the narrative, Secretary Hegseth, that our Democrat colleagues want to draw. But how short-minded is your memory? It was just a few months ago that you was supporting a commander-in-chief that you guys were covering up for or flat out lying about. Who was in charge? And that was a commander-in-chief. Oh, but let's not talk about that. Instead, let's just point fingers at something that fits a narrative. You want to talk about war powers or the fact that during our reposturing in the Middle East against Iran, which would have never taken place if our colleagues on the other side would have held the administration accountable while they were giving billions of dollars back to Iran and knowing good and well during the briefings that they were actually trying to develop a nuclear weapon, but we turned a blind eye to that. And now the mess that was created by the Biden administration, this administration, or the Trump administration, and the leadership of Secretary Hegseth is simply trying to clean up. But forget about the past. Let's talk about this. Oh, let's talk about reposturing, by the way. And wasn't it Secretary of the Navy, Del Toro, that came to us and said that he was fighting the largest naval battle since World War II? Did anybody in this dais authorize that? That was his words, who sat right there where Secretary Hegseth was, and I laughed. And I said, I didn't think the Houthis had a Navy, so why are we fighting a naval battle there? And did you guys complain about it? Did you guys say one thing about it? Nope. You just sat there because, hey, it didn't fit your narrative, but this one does. And then you want to start talking about the National Guard and the Marines. Didn't President Eisenhower deploy troops or federalized troops in Arkansas in 1957 and also deploy the 101st Airborne because the governor then refused to protect civil rights and personal property? What about President Kennedy in 62 and 63 that also did it because Mississippi and Alabama refused to do the same thing? And so since the governor at that time refused to protect citizens and the property, he federalized the National Guard. Oh, let's think about 65 too, because LBJ did the exact same thing. But that's history, but yet it's extremely important to the context of what you guys are claiming to be done here. But that doesn't fit the narrative that you guys want to put out there. History is history. Look back at it if you want to or not.
And this, ladies and gentlemen, is Republicans in a nutshell. History is history. Look back on it or not. I am a far leftist. That means that what I believe needs to happen is that this man should be arrested. That's what it means. I am a far leftist, which means I support arresting him, depriving him of all of his property and liberty. That's what a far leftist wants to do. Okay? I'm in favor of arresting Mr. Mullen for crimes against humanity.
But keep in mind, every time you're pointing fingers here, you got 3 fingers pointing back at you.
Oh my fucking God. These stupid capitalist Nepo baby, trust fund babies doing this folk act Let me do some yarns. Let me do some. Let me play up my fake accent. What a fucking douchebag.
Because the previous administration, you guys 100% turned a blind eye to and did nothing to hold them accountable. Nothing. So don't sit up here on the dais and pretend like you're trying to hold administration accountable now, because you didn't for 4 years. You literally covered up for a commander-in-chief that was absent-minded and absent leadership. And you guys did absolutely nothing. Even your left-leaning media is saying it was the worst cover-up possibly in political history. Yet nothing from you guys. You all should be ashamed of yourself. Literally, you should be ashamed of yourself. I yield back.
Thank you, Senator Mullen. Senator Rosen.
I yield my time to Senator Duckworth.
Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In response to my colleague from Oklahoma, I believe the Secretary of Defense has just responded last week and admitted that the $1 billion mission that he led against the Houthis, who do not have a Navy, has not restored the transit of U.S. flag commercial vessels through the Red Sea, and in fact has resulted in the loss of 2 F-18 Hornets to the tune of $60 million apiece, as well as, I believe the last count was 7 Reaper drones to the tune of another $200 million. You are blowing through money like my fellow cadets and I did in our first Liberty after basic camp. Luckily, I didn't end up with a questionable tattoo. Your failures, Mr. Secretary, since you've taken office has been staggering. You sent classified operational information over Signal to chest thump in front of your wife, who, by the way, has no security clearance, risking service member lives in the process. You blew the $1 billion fight against the Houthis, whom, again, as my colleague says, has no Navy, and yet you lost all of those aircraft. You've created such a hostile command environment that no one wants to serve as your chief of staff or work with you in other senior DoD leadership roles. But what we should all be talking about, more than all of this, is that you have an unjustified, un-American misuse of the military in American cities, pulling resources and attention away from core missions to the detriment of the country, the war fighters, and yes, the war fighting that you claim to love. I don't know if this is because you are too inexperienced and incompetent to understand the real threats facing our country, or if it's because you are just an unqualified yes man who can't tell the president how to keep Americans safe. You are focusing on renaming basis for Confederate generals. You said just now to Senator King that to a man and to a woman, we would rather be associated with the old Confederate names. Well, I am one of those women. I served at Fort Rucker, Alabama, a base that was named for a traitor who took arms against the United States of America, led troops who killed Americans. It was renamed for Mike Novosel, a Medal of Honor recipient who, in his citation for the Medal of Honor, includes that he saved 29 American lives, to include hovering backwards in a helicopter towards an enemy bunker where a wounded American was laying and saved that person, including after being taken fire himself. I know a little something about what it takes to fly a helicopter when you've been hit by enemy fire. That was heroic. I'd rather be associated with Mike Novosel than a failed Confederate traitor. I don't know whether you are inexperienced or too incompetent, but I wonder when you will actually focus on our nation's warfighting mission. We know that California is just a deliberate, systematic, political, and dangerous campaign led by you. We should not be using our military to play cops against Americans. General Kane, as chairman, a key part of your job is to coordinate military planning across the joint force. Is the department currently incorporating into any military plans expanding the use of the reserve forces to include the National Guard or active duty troops to support domestic law enforcement, including in other locations in the United States?
Senator, you know, we careful.
So no, General.
Well, it's not really a yes or no question, Madam Senator. We plan all kinds of different things.
I think it is a yes or no question.
I'm not aware of anything, but the reason why I'm answering is the tags may be looking at something that I'm not aware of.
What are you doing at your level? You're not aware of that happening at your level? Because we know that on his first day, President Trump directed U.S. Northern Command to revise its unified command plan to add new planning requirements to combat, and I quote, criminal activities. A series of follow-up executive orders continue to redirect DOD priorities to supporting domestic law enforcement, including one in April that tells DOD, and I quote, use national security assets for law and order. In other words, do law enforcement's job. I'd like to enter these executive orders into the record, Mr. Chairman.
Is there objection? Without objection, so ordered.
Hegseth, you say you are focused on warfighting and warriors. These are your words. Yet you are diverting untold DoD resources and attention to a fundamentally non-military mission of domestic policing. Across the country, we have qualified police officers who are trained for that mission. They know those streets better than the Marines you deploy to Los Angeles, who normally focus on the Indo-Pacific. And you recently approved 700 more troops in 3 other states to do admin and logistics works for ICE. You say all of this is valuable training, but I would much rather have our troops do tough, realistic training relevant to high-end combat. Instead of typing in spreadsheets for ICE, they should be conducting live fire maneuver exercises. Instead of patrolling American neighborhoods and standing in front of federal buildings, they should be rehearsing call for fire missions. We have local police who can stand in front of those federal buildings. And the list of distractions goes on. You are encouraging the DoD workforce to go work for DHS in increasing numbers. You're pulling the military away from facing foreign enemies who literally say things like death to America. And you're putting troops with weapons aimed at Americans. Mr. Secretary, let the military get back to its real job. Stop forcing them to do DHSs. And if you want to be DHS Secretary, maybe you can apply for that job when you're fired from this one due to your incompetence.
The senator's time has expired. Senator Budd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here. I think you all are doing a great job, and the proof is in the pudding. If you look at morale, you look at recruiting, you look at deterrence, incredible performance compared to the last administration. So thank you all for your work, and in short order as well. Mr. Secretary, while I was overseas and time zones away this past weekend, I was able to watch the parade, even though it was on the size of a phone screen. But I just wanted to catch a quick glimpse at it since it was controversial from the other side. And I tell you what, I stayed up until 2 a.m. I could not turn it off because it wasn't about you, Mr. Secretary. It wasn't about our president. It was about the men and women that don't get recognized each and every day. And I could just see them grinning underneath their helmets and their battle dress uniforms, smiling from ear to ear, being recognized, whether it's on TV or by those of us in elected office that were present, or the folks that stood up to support them. So thank you for that. And again, back to the morale that we're seeing in the recruiting numbers, I think it will go even higher as a result of that. So I appreciate what you did.
Mr.
Secretary, I want to echo
really
what
defense,
my colleague
but
Senator Kramer said a few moments ago about air dominance. And in previous years, Air Force officials have recommended purchasing at least 72 fighters a year, which would be reachable by maximizing F-35 and then the F-15EX production lines. And I applaud the president's decision to proceed with the F-46.
What do you think the cause of recruitment numbers going up? Recruitment numbers tend to go up when the job market gets shittier. That's the number one tracking thing you can look at, or like when they hit their when they're hitting their recruited goals, it's because the economy's shit.
But I understand that it's going to take a while before that's developed and fielded. And I'm interested in maintaining a strong level of production of other advanced fighters in the interim. So what can you tell us?
Wait, we got a hype train? How the fuck did we get a hype train? What the hell?
About the future of the F-15EX in particular, while we await the arrival of the F-40.
I love the F-15EX program because the F-15 had its inaugural flight in 1974. And the American military industrial complex is so incapable of actually producing a militarily relevant plane that it cannot advance beyond the F-15 and the B-52. These are 60s or 50s era planes. Absolutely pathetic.
47. And Mr. Secretary, that'd be for you. And Mr. Chairman, you've got experience, significant experience as a fighter pilot. So if you'd care to weigh in as well.
To your point, Senator, I would defer the balance of my air superiority time to the chairman. But I would note,
chat, what is a hype train? It's at the top of the chat. A hype train is when everybody subscribes and gives me bits, and everybody's hyped because they're supporting the streamer. And you get special emotes and other rewards if you sub, resub, gift a use your Prime, or gift a sub, or gift at least 200 bits during the hype train. It's very, very good for you. What are bits? They're like Twitch's Monopoly money. Basically, you give Twitch money to give bits.
That the budget does have a substantial increase on F-15EX, recognizing its capabilities and the bridging function that particular aircraft provides us. And all of this with an eye toward existing fights and future fights, but it certainly does make an investment. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Thanks for the question. And, you know, you could use the current Israeli efforts as a case study in air dominance and air superiority. And if you look at harder problems in Iran, you start to see the importance of having the mix of things like F-47, EX, and any other future capabilities that are considered. So we have to stay up on the TAC air, step, and appreciate your leadership and interest in this, sir, as we move forward.
Thank you. Switching gears a bit, Mr. Secretary, our Special Operations Forces play a crucial role in preventing and then winning armed conflict. However, the previous administration proposed cuts to soft billets in the programs. So how does the President's budget request impact the size, structure, and posture of our Special Operations Forces for 2026?
Well, sir, what you will not see is cuts to soft billets, especially recognizing not just the last 25 years, but even the op tempo of the last 4 to 6 years, and the recognition that those are forces that are used often, mobilized often. There's a stress and strain on that. And so investments both in personnel, but also training and capabilities is front and center.
Thank you for that. Last year, I led an NDAA provision that mandates that all future annual defense planning guidance includes specifics with respect to the size, structure, posture, and priorities for SOF. So I want to make clear the importance of this directive. And the committee was due a report back on March 1st on this component of the defense planning guidance. But since that date has come and gone, I'll ask now, will you, Mr. Secretary, commit to seeing this requirement through and providing an update to this committee on its progress?
Yes, Senator, we'll get that to you.
I want to ask briefly about munitions, Mr. General Kane. How do you see the rate of munitions usage in Ukraine, in the Middle East, particularly our ground-based interceptors and air-to-air missiles influencing this budget request and future budget requests?
Well, Senator, we're always mindful of the consumption rate. One of the great case stories of the fight in the Middle East is the advancement of use of rockets, laser rockets, to target one-way attack drones, which I know the committee helped push, and that's helping to save some of our critical air-to-air munitions. And I can circle back with you on the other matters offline, sir.
Please do. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Senator Kelly, Senator Rosen yielded her time to Senator Duckworth, who was scheduled to be last. Do you think we ought to go ahead and let Senator Rosen ask questions right now?
100%.
Absolutely. Senator Rosen, you're recognized. I thought I would just create a stir down there.
No, I thank you to my seatmates on both sides. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We take care of each other. And again, thank you, Chairman Wicker, Ranking Member Reed, for holding this hearing, Mr. Secretary.
I actually kind of want to show you guys something funny. I watched it on my own time for research because this is the type of stuff I do off stream. What I do off stream is I build my knowledge base by keeping abreast of like military trade journals. I watch, conversations from, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and I read scholarly books and stuff like that. Stuff that you can't put on stream because it's part of how I recall things very quickly and I'm able to talk about them on stream is because I listen to stuff or read stuff off stream. And one of the things that I recently watched, and I keep sticking my craw because I'm like, I got to figure out a way to show this on stream. I really need to figure out a way to show this.
And it's all focused on.
So I watched this thing about these are the generals of the Joint Chiefs, some of the most senior 4-star generals in our military. You have Army, you have Air Force, you have Coast Guard, Marines, Navy, and Space Force. And honest to God, this video may have put me in the best mood of any video I have ever seen. America and our empire is toast. The amount of graft and theft that goes on in the Pentagon is so extreme that they're not even allowed to fix equipment in the field because they don't have intellectual property rights to the replacement parts. So they have to order them from America. That is real. Here, I'll show you.
Because I'm tired of, frankly, you know, when I go to an organization and I procure something, and then I have to go back to them to get their permission to do additive manufacturing and 3D printing for a part, for example, on an F-35, that it costs me $50 to print it. And it's not good for 5,000 hours, but it's good for 500 hours. I'm printing out of hard plastic or soft metal, and I know that it's a rivet. It's just a rivet, and that's what's keeping an aircraft down. And that aircraft is forward. And so I have to order the part. I have to get the part shipped across the Pacific. I have to link it up with the aircraft. I have to have a maintainer who is already available, already ready to go, when I could have additive manufactured that part myself if I owned the tech data rights. So frankly...
So in other words, our military cannot fix shit because of capitalism. Because the capitalists have such a stranglehold on sucking money out of our military, they can't do anything. You think you're beating China?
I would like us to own our own tech data rights as opposed to paying industry to source the part that I can make myself.
Well, General Smith, you've been involved. This is you're about half.
Wait a minute. The general wants to be able to have the government make parts for themselves? Damn, that sounds like state-owned enterprise. That sounds positively communistic.
Through a 10-year period of force redesign for the Marine Corps, you put a big emphasis on these littoral units, amphibious capabilities, assault capabilities, China being the pacing challenge. Some of the critics have said, well, this is going to take away from other warfighting capabilities, and we're investing too much in the Indo-Pacific and too much around this kind of activity. How important are these new capabilities to our ability both to deter and defend against China?
Have you seen this? Democrats are already throwing for their top donors. In the Signal chat, the content of which were viewed by the Lever, influential Democratic figures noted they need to win the next election, which means we cannot afford to alienate a very vocal and wealthy group of donors. To provide political cover for supporting the crypto industry's legislative giveaway, group chat members suggested pro-crypto allies in the Democratic caucus could introduce symbolic anti-corruption amendments to the final bill prohibiting President Donald Trump and elected officials from profiting from cryptocurrencies, knowing the effort would be DOA, since the language would be voted down by Republicans. I think that if you are legitimately a fan or support the Democratic Party at this point, you are either an ignoramus or a fraud. Like, it's true. Now, I can't single-handedly make people leave the Democratic Party. I wish I could. I wish I had that power. But it's a fucking joke.
And how confident are you that the Marine Corps
The worst part is this doesn't have a transcript. Like, this doesn't have a transcript, which is so fucking annoying. Oh, and the Space Force commander is a fascist. It's very clear, and when you watch the video, he's an extreme right-wing fascist.
Be able to serve all the other purposes. You have 2/3, I think, of your active duty force in the Indo-Pacific. Admiral Kilby, for the Navy, obviously the Indo-Pacific is front and center. In fact, we just had a CFR trip to Indo-PACOM, spent some time with Admiral Paparo and others out there, incredibly impressive. Spent a day down in a submarine, a nuclear attack submarine, and learning the life of submariners, which is something to behold. It was really something. We're facing a China that has now a larger Navy, at least by numbers, than we do, and it's all focused on one region of the world, while we're focused globally. How confident are you that our quality is sufficiently above China's Navy to make up for the fact they're competitive quantitatively? And then I want to get to shipbuilding as well, and how we're going to possibly compete when China has, I think, 200 times the shipbuilding capacity that the United States has?
Yeah, I have no doubt about the quality of our ships, and no doubt about the way we employ them and train to them. You know, we have a world-class force generation process which produces either an amphibious readiness group or a strike group that I've not seen equaled. So we can talk about that. But the process to create a group of sailors or Marines to go over the horizon and do whatever the nation asks it to do, I have no at all regret or concern about that ability. So that's a quality piece. You got at quantity, and that is a concern for me. It's been a concern in the Navy for a long time about the numbers of ships we have and our ability to produce them. So I'm disappointed with our ability as an industrial base to react to that quickly. Virtually every one of our shipbuilding classes is behind schedule for a number of reasons. So we are looking to transition, much the way General George talked about, a new view, produce a hybrid fleet, and that includes traditional ships as well as unmanned ships, undersea, surface, and air vehicles to go do the things we needed to do, because we can't produce the numbers of ships that we need. We can't afford it either. So that mix, I think, is what I'm looking forward to. And what we've seen in the Ukraine, what we've seen in frankly, in other areas that we've been experimenting is there's great value there, and using things differently in a different manner. So I'm enthusiastic about that. It's probably a different part of our industrial base that we could tap into, so we won't compete with the 7 yards that produce our ships now, or don't have to anyway. So I see great promise. Last week I went out to San Diego and met with Admiral Paparo and Admiral Kaler, and they were doing some experimentation and rehearsing about what these things would do and how we would control them, how we control the data, all the things that General George talked about. And I see that is the future for us. Initially, I'm focused as the Navy on 2027. I want to produce my ships and my aircraft and my submarines at a readiness state that can satisfy Admiral Kaler and Admiral Paparo if needed. That includes an element that's unmanned as well. And as we move through this, an increment 2 would be, how do they integrate with a strike group at sea? How do they integrate with an undersea submarine force to do different things? And how do they integrate with our air wing on our aircraft carriers? So to me, that's the great promise. There's a connection that I haven't seen really forever between the White House and Congress and OSD and the Navy and really the nation. So that's an opportunity for us to get after this in a different manner, and I see that we should run through that door because it's wide open.
The President recently issued an executive order on regaining shipbuilding capacity in the United States, but how does that become reality? Is there money behind that?
We're starting to see some folks come over, like the South Korean Hanwha, invest in the Philadelphia shipyard. There's a potential there. There's potential to use some of our ships to do non-traditional work, where Austal is now certified to produce parts for the submarine.
So, like, the American Navy is like, oh, yeah, we're going to build a lot of ships by buying it from South Korea. Now, South Korea is probably in the ideal location for being suppressed by the Chinese. Like, our military is completely delusional and insane. 200 times the shipbuilding capacity in China. 200 times. I think people hear that number and they kind of just don't believe it's true.
This is Cheongjo the Great, a next-generation warship made in South Korea.
It's so funny to look at this because, like, this is so obvious. This is like looking at a battleship right before World War II. That's what it is. It is a battleship right before World War II. Just a sitting fucking duck. An expensive boondoggle. And it'll get absolutely flattened by drones and missiles in an actual peer-on-peer conflict. Look at how the Russian Navy has been embarrassed by Ukraine, because conventional navies are dog shit against this generation of autonomous weapons that are low cost. These navies are floating coffins and boondoggles and wastes. You know what China just built? China's new drone carrier. They built a drone carrier ship, not the plane. There it is.
Splitting.
Like, look at this thing. This shed is a protected catapult, and it launches jet drones, high-powered drones. Let me see if I can find it, if it's in this video. Oh, here it is.
11 drones appeared. Measuring objects in satellite images tells us that this naval variant of the GJ-11 is some 12 meters long and 14 meters wide. It's also got foldable wings. Knowing its shape and mission, those dimensions can then be compared to other similar UAV prototypes made in the West, like Boeing's X-45, X-47 and Phantom Ray strike drone demonstrators. Using those as comparison, it's plausible that the Chinese GJ-11 weighs around 5 tons empty and has a takeoff weight approaching 15 tons. It plausibly holds less fuel than similar US planes, as very long range may not be as important.
And the reason, and the reality of this ship, the technology that's being deployed, is a recognition that we're not in the extremely high, expensive ballistic missile era. We're in the drone era. And so China is developing drone technology. And by the way, that ship would be vulnerable to long-range rockets and drones itself. But it is so much less expensive than a heavy fleet carrier with F-35s. Like, we are fucking cooked beyond cooked. And our military is just completely incapable of actually reckoning with the reality we actually live in. Okay, apparently I closed the thing. Whatever. All right. U.S. Colonel Nathan McCormick was removed from his post from the Joint Chiefs of Staff for calling Israel a death cult and saying the U.S. is... Yeah, I know. I saw that. They fired the Middle East expert because he was posting how much Israel is bad. I don't know if you guys saw this. A senior colonel, an expert on the Middle East, was just fired because he was posting about how bad... Oh, here it is. Here it is. Pentagon removing Israel planner from Joint Staff, launching probe after JNS scoop. In other words, this is the Jewish News Service, which is a Zionist spy agency, you know, another Mossad cutout. Hours after the JNS broke the news that Colonel Nathan McCormack, the Levant and Egypt branch chief at the Joint Chiefs of Staff J5 Planning Directorate, has long posted anti-Israel statements on a semi-anonymous public social media account. Chief Israel planner at Pentagon bashes Jewish state publicly extensively. If this is what he's publicly sharing, who knows what he's saying behind closed doors? A Pentagon contractor. So in other words, an Israeli spy, snitched on this guy. Colonel Nathan McCormack, the Levant and Egypt branch chief, has referred publicly to Netanyahu and his Judeo-supremacist cronies, to Washington having overwhelmingly enabled Israel's bad behavior, and pro-Israel activists in the United States prioritizing support for Israel over our actual foreign interests. JNS has learned that McCormack, who is, according to his LinkedIn account, has been his current role since June 2024, has also bashed Israel as a death cult, and that it is America's worst ally, where he has written hundreds of posts since the October 7th terrorist attacks about Jews and Israel. Okay, well, I don't know why I can't get this to work. I don't know what the fuck's going on. The Western states go to great lengths to avoid criticism of Israel, much out of Holocaust guilt. Israel's action over the decades have prompted the accusations of ethnic cleansing and genocide. Netanyahu and his Judeo-supremacist cronies are determined to prolong the conflict for their own goals, either to remain in power or to annex the land, he wrote on social media in May. I've lately been considering whether we might be Israel's proxy and not realized it yet. Our worst ally. We get literally nothing out of the partnership other than the enmity of millions of people in the Middle East, Africa, and Asia. The Pentagon's chief expert gives the exact same analysis as me and Hassan. Well, actually, it's my analysis. Hassan would say that this isn't fair to say that we're Israel, like that Israel's lobby has taken us over. Hassan and I disagree on that. I think that the Israeli lobby has created this negative feedback loop where, while supporting Israel initially supported Americans' imperialist ambitions to the Middle East, it's now, because Israel set up influence operations, we're now operating in ways that are not beneficial to the U.S. and our empire. And we're actually serving the interests of Israel because they bribe our politicians. And I honestly don't even think that it's what Israel's right is doing isn't to the benefit of Israel in the long term. I think it's actually putting them in an even worse position in the long term. The U.S. has not been an honest broker. We have overwhelmingly enabled Israel's bad behavior. He was talking about the Biden administration. In one post replying to the idea of Gaza potentially finding refuge outside the Gaza Strip, McCormick wrote that Israel wants to expel them and cleanse Ersatz Israel of ethnic Palestinians. And on October 11, 2023, 5 days after Hamas's terror attack, McCormack wrote that Israel has an absolute right to respond militarily, and civilians may legally be caught in the crossfire, but that Israel's response is always, not hyperbole, disproportionately target Palestinian civilians. So in other words, this guy has the most objective analysis, and he got fired for being honest. How so? What data? This is literally what I do at work every day, he wrote to someone in May. I'm on the Joint Staff J5 Israel branch chief. So in other words, some fucking Zionist was arguing with him, and he said, actually, I'm the expert, you dumb fuck. Oh my God, he was probably like debating with a Destiny fan or something. Oh my God. Was he debating a Destiny fan? He probably was. I can't, for some reason, my ISP like blocks the archive website. So it said LinkedIn, so not a Destiny fan. True. LinkedIn people tend to have jobs. So cool. That's great. So the archive is broken. Awesome. A DoD contractor who's interacting with Workout described the posting as dangerous. You mean accurate? Who else has seen this? He's an easy mark for foreign intelligence agencies. Publicly expressing such radical views that undermine the president's policy open the doors to bad actors to exploit. These anti-Israel rants, except they're totally accurate. I fucking hate these Zionist, like, genocidal maniac liars. Holy fucking shit. Honestly, Assad should interview him. Brian Grimm should interview him, but he hasn't been, I don't think he's been removed from the military, so he still has a career and he's trying not to get prosecuted. So he probably can't talk until he's out of the military. But this definitely destroyed his career. He's done.
Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei says Iran will never compromise as Israel and Iran continues to trade strikes. It comes as US President Donald Trump called for Iran's leaders to unconditionally surrender. Posting on his social media platform Truth Social, President Trump said the US knows where the Supreme Leader is, but they are not going to kill him, at least not yet. Our North America correspondent Jake Kwon has this report.
President Donald Trump is considering whether the U.S. should get directly involved in the war against Iran, a question that may define his presidency. He rushed back to Washington, leaving the G7 meeting a day early.
He might not even be left-wing, chat. The thing is, he's a colonel. He's probably not even left-wing at all. He's probably a right-winger who just is an actual nationalist and looks at what Israel's doing and has a sense of moral right and wrong and takes like just war doctrine seriously and just looks at the situation because he sees all the truth and goes, they're genocidal maniacs. Like, he's probably not even left-wing.
French President Emmanuel Macron tried to explain the sudden exit, wishfully suggesting it was to negotiate a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. That's not it, President Trump said. In fact, there is something bigger in the works.
We're not looking for a ceasefire. I didn't say I was looking for a ceasefire. That was Emmanuel, nice guy, but he doesn't get it right too often. But we're not looking. We're looking for better than a ceasefire.
What specifically is better than a ceasefire? What are you looking for here?
An end, a real end, not a ceasefire. An end.
Americans have been helping Israel shoot down Iranian missiles, but resisted joining the attack. But in an emergency meeting at the White House yesterday, he discussed striking deeply buried Iranian nuclear sites, like the one at Fordo that Israeli bombs cannot reach. The meeting also came with a flurry of social media posts, each more aggressive than the last. In this post, he said, "We know where the so-called Supreme Leader is hiding, but we're not going to take him out, at least not for now. But we don't want missiles shot at civilians or American soldiers." Next one simply says, "Unconditional surrender." Iran's Supreme Leader remained defiant. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei wrote on social media, "Iran will never compromise with Zionists, and we will show the Zionists no mercy." And in another post, he wrote, "The battle begins." Americans have been moving its fighter jets to the Middle East, as well as moving to Europe dozens of tanker aircrafts used to refuel fighter jets and bombers.
They should have done the deal. I told them, do the deal. So I don't know. I'm not too much in a mood to negotiate.
It's unclear how much of this is stepping up to fight or the art of the deal. But President Trump appears to have lost his taste for diplomacy. It's quite a turn for a president who promised no new war on his watch. Jay Kwon, BBC News, Washington.
Well, Mohammed Taha is our correspondent with BBC Arabic and has been following the developments in the region for us.
This is the day 6 in this unprecedented war in the Middle East. Overnight, there were strikes from Iran on Tel Aviv. We have these two cities, big cities in the Middle East, Tehran and Tel Aviv, nearly on halt because of these strikes. Around 30 missiles from Iran to Israel in 20 minutes. We don't know exactly what have been hit, but we heard that at least an automotive factory was hit in the area of Tel Aviv. Israel does not announce exactly what's been hit.
And in terms of the latest on Tehran itself and the damage there, of course, this time yesterday we were talking about President Trump posting on social media that everyone in Tehran should evacuate.
Yeah, this is shocking as well. As you mentioned, the evacuation. The Israeli army issued an evacuation order at 2:30 a.m. Tehran time to quarter number 18, is a residential area. Half 2 in the morning. At 3, the Israel aeroplane hit that quarter, which is astonishing to see a warning being issued at that early time of the day. We understand also that the Israeli aeroplane hit the Imam University, Imam Hussein University, that is including a nuclear physics faculty and an aviation engineering faculty as well.
Mohammed Taha there. Well, I also talked to Niamat Ibrahimi, who's from the University of Melbourne. I asked for his assessment on what the US might do next.
You know, this 6th day of war, which was quite unexpected in many levels, there are many things we really do not know. The details of the planning for the attack and in terms of how it is unfolding, because there are severe restrictions on freedom of information and reporting in Iran. There are also similar restrictions in Israel. However, we do know that there are some important aspects of this war. One, that this is, I think, another incidence of a major power attacking another power, another state-to-state conflict, which is not sending a good signal for international peace and security. And Israelis are citing the reason is that they are preempting a future development of nuclear weapons by Iran. However, this is going against many of the reports of international agencies, including IAEA. And in fact, U.S. intelligence agencies have been reporting that Iran, even though they were enriching uranium to a significant level, but they were not getting any close to developing weapons of mass destruction in the nuclear weapons. So now I think Iran has very limited options. There are significant disparities in terms of military capabilities and power between Iran and Israel, especially if the United States also join in the confrontation.
Mike, do you see
Iran.
this? Hold on, what's up? Nippon Steel has completed its $14.9 billion takeover of U.S. Steel. The company announced capping a year and a half of fraud negotiation, resulting in a landmark deal for a president who was originally opposed to the deal. By the way, Donald Trump did the most left-wing industrial policy I've seen in my entire life with this deal. The agreement includes a golden share arrangement that gives President Donald Trump final say over key parts of the company's U.S. business, including plant closures, headquarters location, and employee salaries. The government now owns part of this business. This is the most left-wing governmental policy I've ever seen. Nippon Steel said Wednesday the golden share agreement will allow the U.S. government to appoint one independent director to the company's board and require presidential approval for key decisions such as relocating U.S. Steel's Pittsburgh headquarters, changing the name of the company, and moving jobs and production outside the United States. I've been told that this is impossible. He just did a partial nationalization. Objectively, this is one of the most left-wing things I've ever seen the U.S. president do in my lifetime, period.
And the Iranian regime has tried to fight back. And as you reported, the Iranian Supreme Leader Khamenei has said that they are escalating. But we really don't know much in terms of how far they can go in terms of escalating and fighting back, and how far they can sustain that level of confrontation with both Israel and the United States if they also join the war.
Currently, this is a CBS News special report. Good morning, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. We are coming on the air with important news from the Supreme Court, where justices have just ruled on a case that deals with whether states are allowed to ban the medical transition of minors. In 2023, Tennessee passed a law banning hormones, puberty blockers, and surgeries for children under 18. Civil rights groups and children who identify as trans sued, saying the law discriminated against transgender people because it denies them certain medical treatment. A lower court previously upheld the Tennessee law banning drugs and surgeries for minors who want to change their sex, saying it did not violate the Equal Protection Clause. Currently, 27 states have laws or policies that ban or in some way limit access to gender-affirming care for minors.
Okay, we have somebody who decided to post a chat okay. So we've got another 40-year-old man. You've come into the chat as a 40-year-old man. What are you saying, fellow 40-year-old man? Okay. They will destroy Iran, then they can no longer defend. It will be all offensive attacks. Classic boomer Gen X Republican. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Gen X is in the bullseye for lead exposure, harms to mental health. Oh no. Oh no. New research for the University of Virginia found people born between the late 60s and mid 80s in the United States experienced high level of lead exposure as children due to the use of leaded gasoline. If you look at the current population, Generation X likely had the highest exposures in mass. A greater risk for ADD, psychosis, thought disorders, externalizing conditions like antisocial behavior, and internalizing conditions like anxiety and depression. They are more neurotic and less conscientious. Lower levels of wealth, health, and happiness over time. Okay. So everybody be nice. Be nice. His brain is damaged. Be nice. Okay. Yeah, so many people are going to exist with a war with Iran. Wait, what are you trying to say? Hassan misspelling is a girl, though. Okay, guys, what does anyone have that following account? I want to see who he follows. What's the website that follows? What's the website that shows your follows? I want to see this Gooters follows. I want to see this 40-year-old Gooters follows. Oh my god, dude. All right, let's see here. Okay, so he was like a WoW guy. He had decent, decent people. Started to get more and more into gooting. What is Tomination Time? I've never seen this one.
Hi, I'm Tom from Tomination Time, and I'm the first partnered fitness streamer on Twitch. I started this channel back in mid-2016 as a diet, fitness, Q&A, motivation.
Hold on. Oh, fuck. Did I close it? Come on, man. Tim the Tat Man. We got... He's kind of giving normie to me, honestly. He's kind of giving normie to me. As much as I want to bust him up, he's kind of just giving me normie. How come you have such terrible takes? I mean, I see Asmongold, but he's giving me normie. I'm gonna say you're an Asmon following normie, which is odd. Okay, Hassan and you gawkers. Dude, you're obviously dealing with some internalized shit, okay? You're following like an oiled up fitness streamer. Like, we know. It's okay. You have some certain feelings. It's Pride Month. It's okay. It's okay. Check his Hassan ban. Oh, hold on. Here's his Asmon logs. I hate Trump, but I'm not a moron. If he crushes this, then they're good enough job. I will shut up. I think anyone with the brain doesn't want to bomb Iran. And you got timed out for that. Honestly, I'm gonna go easy on this guy, okay? I'm gonna go easy on this guy. All right, man, why do you think this is an argument? Gawker. You know that we just agree on politics, right? That's not gawking. That's just agreeing on an issue. That's not sexual in any way. Why is this like the argument you go for? Oh, you're agreeing with Hassan, therefore you're sexually attracted to Hassan. That's not true at all. Why do you go for this? All of you losers defending Hassan like he isn't a moron. Well, what makes him a moron? You're just saying he's a moron, and you're saying we're gawkers. What's the problem? Like, you're not really making any points, man. Again, it's Pride Month. I was banned for being critical. Okay, I mean, if you go into a chat and you act like an asshole, if the streamer doesn't want you there, then you're gone. Just apologize and be like, sorry for being a dick. Hassan looked at the sun and thought it was a missile. I mean, people are going to make reactions. They're going to make mistakes in the moment. That's the problem with live. Anti-Semite Hassan. He didn't think it was a missile. He just asked, what was that, while pointing to the sun? Oh, that's not avoiding the never touches grass accusations. Just like you mention something bad about Hassan, you get attacked. LOL, hilarious. Okay, so I asked you to make an argument and you can't. I think one of the problems with people online is they're not used to actually having to defend their own thoughts. See, what you're doing right now is you're expressing a view of not liking Hassan that you think is some sort of consensus. That's not a consensus. I don't agree with you on that. So maybe I agree with Hassan and you don't. What specifically do you have a problem with? What makes Hassan an anti-Semite? Like, anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. Do you agree with Israel bombing kids and starving kids? Like, what exactly do you have a problem with? Try to make an argument that doesn't rely on anything to do with Hassan's body or anything to do with gay sex. I know that you're focused on that. You spent a lot of time thinking about Hassan's body or gay sex. Can you try to make an argument that doesn't revolve around sex? We got has Boris said a racist Nazi. Okay, you didn't link me to the guy. The guy is furiously typing in chat GPT. Yeah. I like this experiment, Whack-A-Troll. I'm inclined to think that it will be more effective than ignoring them, because all attention is truly good attention, you know. It is absolutely negative attention is not good attention. And anybody who says that is coping. Bad press is bad press. It doesn't help you. If everybody's laughing at you and calling you an asshole, it doesn't make you better off. Okay, let's see if he managed to get anything. Okay, it looks like he choked. Who's the other guy? What's the other guy? Oh, okay. I mean, he seems like a cuck. He just seems like a cuck. This is kind of standard. Whenever I ask anybody who's like anti me or anti Hassan to make a point, it kind of this is what usually happens. It's why people like Asmongold or Destiny don't actually try to have any kind of debate on the merit, because it ends up with Finkelstein. They just get fucking humiliated. That's why Asmongold, after years of talking to Hassan in conversations, doesn't anymore, because he knows he can't defend his position. All right, let's keep going.
Joining me now with the latest on this, CBS News chief legal correspondent Jan Crawford.
That one troll, JBM5015, completely scrubbed his internet presence after coming in here to troll. I really should do a video on that. Humiliating a right-wing troll. How to treat right-wing trolls. That would be a really fun video. I don't know. Do you guys remember what day that was? I think we probably still have the VOD. It wasn't that long ago, was it? We have a JBM 1550. Oh my God. If you have like any of the stuff, like if you could intersperse things that he did about, that would be fucking awesome.
Dan, what did the court say?
The court.
All right, let's go back. So apparently the Supreme Court has basically said that banning trans healthcare for people under the age of 18 is not unconstitutional.
Is upholding the Tennessee law, and like it, laws in 26 other.
40-year-old isn't Gen X, it's millennial. When you're going after random users, perhaps you could educate yourself. You realize you're bullying and doxing users. It's not doxing to look at your logs and your follows and your chats. That's not what doxing is. Doxing is when I took private information and make it public, like your address. But if I look at your logs or your posts that you make under your username, that's not doxing. Furthermore, I'm 41. I know I'm a millennial. I know when Gen X starts. I was calling him Gen X because he made an account in 2011. So that was 14 years ago.
Other states that ban or greatly restrict the use of these hormones, puberty blockers, and potentially surgeries for minors, people who are under 18 who identify as transgender or say they have gender dysphoria and would like to change their biological sex. So what
is the court basically saying?
Not only do I know what a phone book is, I used a phone book. I have in my life used phone books because I needed to, because white pages online did not exist. When I learned to drive, I had to know exactly where I was going in order to get there, because there was no navigator. I had to actually memorize where the fuck I was going. Do you know what that was like? When we got MapQuest, that was such an upgrade in our lives. That was such an upgrade when we got MapQuest. We had to print it out though, and we had to follow it very closely, because if you missed it, it didn't update. So you had to like try to retrace your steps. You know what it was like to do like a 6-hour road trip, and it would be pitch black when you got there, and you were in a completely new part of the country and you didn't know, and then you missed the turn. That was fucking terrible. And then you had to like try to retrace your steps, and if you got lost, you'd have to go to a payphone, or you'd have to go to the gas station and be like, oh fuck, okay, I'm trying to get here. Do you guys know where this is? Half the conversations at gas stations were, hey, do you guys know where blah 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 is? You would just like you'd be walking down the street and people would just pull over and be like, hey, can you give me directions? Citrus Peppercorn, thank you for the tier 1. Mike, aren't you so old you were a character at West Wing? I could have been a character at West Wing, absolutely.
Saying that the state has an interest in things that affect or could affect the lifetime of minors, and that's why that law and the limits it imposes has been upheld.
Yes, 2 things. And obviously this is one of the most controversial and closely watched cases of the term. It's written today by the Chief Justice. It's a 6-3 ruling. The court is saying that children who identify as transgender don't have a constitutional right to get puberty blockers or hormones to change their biological sex. And then it's saying that states have this interest in regulating medicine. They are entitled to make these decisions, and especially where, as the court put it here in this decision, they're novel drugs with potentially life-altering consequences, that it should not be up to the federal courts or a federal judge. Those are issues when it's a novel treatment, as many of these are for these uses, to allow the states to work that out as they see fit. Now, as I said, this means that laws in currently 27 states that already are on the books, those laws will be upheld. States will be free to ban this kind of medical treatment for children, so that if you're taking those kind of medications, if you're a parent and you want your children to be able to, you're going to have to go to states that do allow it. And those, we've got a map of it, you can see, those are kind of on the coast that are still going to be allowing. It's just up to the states. The court's not saying you can't ban it. The court's saying that you can if you want to. So it's going to be up to the states.
You mentioned parents, Jan. Where do they fit into this equation?
Well, there's a separate issue on whether parents have a separate right to get this kind of medical treatment for their children. That constitutional issue was not at stake in this case. This came about after, you said, Tennessee passed that law in 2023. A group of parents, the American Civil Liberties Union, they sued. The Biden administration joined in that suit. And they argued that transgender children had a constitutional right to get these drugs because other kids got them that had other medical conditions. Some had early onset puberty. There were certain cancers where doctors were prescribing these kind of drugs to affect their development. So they argued that transgender kids should have a right to that as well. The court flatly rejected that and agreed with Tennessee's arguments today that this is not treating people differently because of their sex or their status. This is states deciding based on the drugs themselves that transgender girls or people who identify as a transgender boy, none of them would have access to this kind of medication. So they're rejecting claims that there's any kind of equal protection argument. And they're also rejecting or deciding not to decide for now, and this would have been a major expansion. They're not going to decide how they're going to look at transgender people generally under the Constitution. There was an argument that the court should closely scrutinize laws that treat transgender children differently based on that status. Say, treat them and look closely at the laws like you would a racial minority, for example. They're not going to do that. They're focusing on these medicines here at this case and saying states can continue to regulate these kind of drugs.
I want to bring in Jessica Levinson, CBS News legal contributor and Loyola Law School professor. Her work focuses, as you well know, on constitutional law, election law, and the Supreme Court. Jessica, picking up on Jan's point from just a moment ago, so this does not, in all likelihood, resolve.
Real millennials know that we are Generation Y. That's what we were called. Millennial was much later.
future litigation over the status and societal comfort or discomfort with transgenderism in our country?
Well, it does not, period. And I think Jan explained this exactly right. So the court is looking at this law and saying, what is the classification on the basis of? Is it on the basis of transgender status? The court says no, it's on the basis of age, because this says minors cannot use certain treatments, and it's on the basis of medical usage. And so the court says we don't even need to get to this question of, exactly as Jan was explaining, how do we treat groupings, laws that say we're going to, for instance, burden transgender people. We don't even need to get there because we're in a situation where this law doesn't do that. And therefore, there's no reason to look at this law with a searching eye, with a higher level of scrutiny. The court applies the lowest level of scrutiny, rational basis, and concludes that the law does survive that. As Jan said, this is...
Wow, did you find it? Theo gave a pancake. What's this? It's a lot. Raspberry jam and watermelon. Look at that, chat. Because I know what things look like. The seeds are too large. That's how you determine the difference between strawberry and raspberry. Also the smell. I guess I just smell things, you know? Oh, well, this fork is down. All right, let's keep going. Thanks, Theo.
All about the Equal Protection Clause, and this now allows states to make the determination as to whether or not they will bar transgender minors or anyone, to the court's point, from obtaining certain medical treatment for gender transition therapy.
And Jessica, would it be fair to say that this case in any way affects parental rights broadly? Or is this a kind of narrow case in which, though parents might have an interest and might want to advocate on behalf of their children, the court said if you live in a state that has barred this, you're going to have to live within those state laws?
So maybe both. And so there's actually another part of this case that didn't go up to the Supreme Court. We've been talking about the Equal Protection Clause. There's another part of the 14th Amendment, the Due Process Clause. And we know that that part of the Constitution protects other rights and liberties.
Gender dysphoria is discomfort with one's own sex. Also the Supreme Court. This is not sex-based discrimination. It's discrimination based on gender dysphoria. Yeah. It's straightforwardly conservatives getting the outcome they want and rationalizing it after. This is the expression of political power.
And maybe one of those rights and liberties is the right of parents to direct their children's medical care. That wasn't the Constitution.
What was the 6-3 split? The 3 liberals voted against it. The 6 conservatives voted for it. That's why packing the Supreme Court is a core demand.
Question before the court, but I think that there is a lingering question of if a similar case, if a similar law is challenged, not based on the Equal Protection Clause, but based on this question of whether or not parents enjoy a fundamental right to say that they want their children to obtain this kind of care. That's a different legal question that's not resolved today.
Thank you so much for that clarification. My thanks to Jessica Levinson and Jan Crawford, of course, here at the desk. Our coverage will continue on CBS News 24/7, your local news, and tonight on the CBS Evening News. It's been a CBS News special report. I'm Major Garrett in Washington.
Is anybody surprised by this?
Parenthood has many stages, and as the school...
I mean, what can you even say? Let's go back to the Civil War. Let's watch this. There's this interview with Tucker Carlson and Ted Cruz is starting to go viral.
I don't know the population. No, I don't know the population. I don't know the population. No, I don't know the population.
You don't know the population of the country you seek to topple?
How many people living around?
92 million.
Okay. Yeah.
How could you not know that?
I don't sit around memorizing population tables.
Well, it's kind of relevant because you're calling for the overthrow of the government.
Why is it relevant whether it's 90 million or 80 million or 100 million? Why is that relevant?
Because if you don't know anything about the country...
I didn't say I don't know anything about...
Okay, what's the ethnic mix of Iran?
They are Persians and predominantly Shia. Okay, this is cute.
It's not
okay.
even... You don't know anything about Iran. So
okay, I am not the Tucker Carlson expert on Iran.
You're a senator who's calling for the overthrow of the government.
You're the one who
don't know anything about the country.
No, you don't know anything about the country. You're the one who claims they're not trying to murder Donald Trump. You're the one who can't figure out if it was a good idea to kill General Soleimani, and you said it was bad.
You don't believe they're trying to murder Trump.
Yes, I do.
Because you're not calling for military strikes against them in retaliation. And if you really believe that...
We are carrying out military strikes today.
You said Israel was.
Right, with our help. I said we. Israel is leading them, but we're supporting them.
Well, you're breaking news here, because the U.S. government last night denied, the National Security Council spokesman Alex Pfeiffer denied on behalf of Trump that we were acting on Israel's behalf in any offensive capacity.
No, we're not bombing them. Israel's bombing them.
You just said we were.
We are supporting
This is
Israel.
high stakes. You're a senator. If you're saying the United States government is at war with Iran right now, people are listening.
Okay.
I replied to this and I said to myself, Tucker Carlson will likely be the face of the Trumpist right after Trump. He's more in touch with the base and on the cutting edge of the right-wing turn against Israel. Ted Cruz is a pathetic neocon worm. Democrats need to come out as the anti-war party fast. The reason why I think that Tucker Carlson is the person who will inherit the right is because we are entering the era of streamers. I know it's painful to hear, but just like politicians, people hate streamers, but they watch streamers all fucking day. They hate content creators, except for the content creators they like. And we are entering into, and it's the same thing with politicians. People hate politicians, except for the politicians they like. And so we are entering into the era of streamers, and Tucker Carlson is the content creator, the streamer, whatever you want to call it, that bridges the gap between Gen Z, Gen Boomer, and younger conservatives, because he's actually in touch with the far right. And he always has been. He's always had the pulse of the online right under his thumb. That's part of the reason why he was so successful at Fox News, because he was more authentically in touch with the right wing. I'm not complimenting Tucker Carlson. I am observing reality. Ted Cruz is a worm. Ted Cruz is a member of the elite. Ted Cruz is a neocon. He is the opposite. He is despised by regular people. He's a reptilian. So you go ahead and screenshot this, watch it, watch this space. You know I'm right. And the reason why I know I'm right is because a war on Iran is a fucking disastrous idea. A war on Iran is a disastrous idea. Do you know who fought the United States to a standstill in Iraq? Iran-linked militias. You think the United States of America can effectuate regime change in Iran? You're fucking delusional. And if we did invade Iran, it would be a bloodbath that would break this country. It would make Vietnam look like a fucking cakewalk. The delusional idea that the United States of America could invade Iran and win is absolutely insane. Now, yes, they could destroy the government. Yes, they could fuck the country up. Maybe they could even catch the the clerics. Maybe they could fuck it up really badly. I have no doubt that they could kill or assassinate individuals, but the Iranian nation will swallow them up. You think we're gonna do well? When people, you think insurgency operations were bad in Iraq? We've got all sorts of new technologies, and there is a wide open border. It's a Central Asian country. They'll have support flowing in from all over the fucking place. It would be a disaster, the likes of which I don't think America could fucking survive. I just watched your reaction to the fragging video this morning. All I gotta say is Peepo smile. Peepo smile.
Does Mossad share all of its intelligence with us?
Oh, probably not, but they share a lot. We don't share all of our intelligence with them, but we share a lot. It's a close alliance.
Do they spy domestically in the United States?
Oh, they probably do, and we do as well. And friends and allies spy on each other. And I assume all of our allies spy on us.
That's okay with you?
You know what? One of the things about being a conservative is that you're not naive and utopian. You don't think humans are all... Part of the reason socialism doesn't work is the mantra from each according to his abilities to each according to his needs doesn't work. As a conservative, I assume people act in their rational self-interest.
So it's conservative to pay people to spy on you?
It's conservative to recognize that human beings act in their own self-interest, and every one of our friends spies on us, and I'm not...
Do you like it? That's my question.
By the way, Ted Cruz is a fucking shallow thinker, because the very first reaction to that is, okay, if somebody is gaining profit from invading my rights, then it's in my rational self-interest to make it unprofitable. If you spy on me and I catch you, I will severely punish you. And so you raise the stakes so that they are fearful of doing the thing. That's what socialism understands, dumbass, is that we live in a social environment, and an individual acting in their own self-interest can also act collectively. It's in our collective self-interest to care for others because of the reality that a single individual cannot sustain a happy life on their own. So we live in a society, we are social animals, and so that requires rights and obligations. And how we construct those rights and obligations is a collective decision. So under socialism, we would construct our rights and obligations in a way that serves the interest of the proletariat, rather than construct rights and obligations to serve the interest of the bourgeoisie, a tiny elite. It's not about denying self-interest. It's about shaping society to serve the self-interest of the maximum amount of people, you stupid fuck. It's about creating a society, like, for example, if we all collectively say no one gets to own this thing, we'll own it collectively, and somebody tries to own it and everybody else hits them over the head with a wrench, it's not in their self-interest to try to own it because their head turned into pulp.
And I'm not asking whether they have motive to do it. Of course they do. I understand that. And by the way, I'm not mad at them. But you're an American lawmaker, so I just want to know, hold on, I want to know your attitude. Yeah. You said that your guiding principle, in fact, the only principle, the only criterion.
I said guiding, the overwhelming, I wouldn't say only.
Is it in America's interest? Is it in America's interest for Israel to spy on us, including on the president?
It is in America's interest to be closely allied with Israel because we get huge benefits for it. And you want to see the clearest.
But I just want to stop on the spying for a second. That it takes place, as you know, and including on the president.
By the way, this is treasonous. The answer is no. Israel should not spy on us. No, Israel should not spy on the president. If an ally and somebody may be my friend, but if he picks my pocket, I'll punch him in the face and we'll be mad. I'll be mad at him. And it may hurt our friendship because friends don't do that to friends. And part of the reason why my friend doesn't pick my pocket is because in his rational self-interest, he knows he'll break the friendship. So he calculates, I'm going to treat Mike in good faith and honestly because he'll treat me in good faith and honestly. And I enjoy and I get more out of our friendship than the $100 I'll find in his wallet. If you let your friend pick your pocket and you say, well, you're acting in your self-interest, he's going to keep doing it because you've said it's okay. If he'll let me take his money, I'll take his money.
President of the United States and several presidents. And I just want to know if that's okay and why is it okay? Wouldn't an American lawmaker say to a client state, you're not allowed to spy on us? I'm sorry. I know why you want to. I'm not mad at you, but you're not allowed to.
Sure.
And I don't care for it. I don't want to be spied on by you. It's kind of weird not to say that, but you don't seem able to say that.
The answer is that Israeli spies are in the interest of Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz uses Israeli spies to spy on Americans so that he can have more power for him and his donors. So they can commit crimes on the U.S. because it's not Americans doing it, he has plausible deniability.
Everybody but me has an AIPAC person.
What does that mean, an AIPAC person?
It's like your babysitter, your AIPAC babysitter, who is always talking to you for AIPAC. That's how it works on the Republican side. And when they come to D.C., you go have lunch with them. And they've got your cell number, and you have conversations with them.
Thomas Massie is the only Republican lawmaker who's not an AIPAC shill. Now, it doesn't mean he's good. He sucks. He's a fucking like weirdo paleo libertarian. But he is the only actual guy on the right wing who doesn't take money from Israel.
I've had 4 members of Congress say, I'll talk to my AIPAC person. And it's literally what we call them, my AIPAC guy. I'll talk to my AIPAC guy and see if I can get him to, dial those ads back.
And they succeeded.
Ostensibly, It's a group of Americans who lobby on behalf of Israel. They're for anything Israel, and they're a very effective lobbying group.
And by the way, it happens on Democratic side too. Right fucking now. I think I had this story open. Maybe I accidentally closed it. Hold on. Right now, AIPAC is putting a hard press on. I don't have it. Oh, here it is. David Dayan from The Prospect just said, as bombs fell in Tehran, AIPAC got busy contacting House Dems to urge them to support Israel's actions. One member got 100 phone calls. It paid off. 79 members released messages of support, including 28 who explicitly use AIPAC's preferred stand with Israel language. 79 Democrats parroted exactly what AIPAC told them. 28 House Democrats have issued messages saying explicitly they stand with Israel or some close variation thereof. 35 express unequivocal support for Israel without using the magic words stand with Israel precisely, but they leave no doubt as to the members' support. And 16 express soft support for Israel without quite the same inflammatory language. 3 statements have been held up by AIPAC in particular, according to sources familiar with the situation, as models for others to follow. They are Reps Greg Landsman from Ohio, Mike Levin from California, and George Whitesides from California. All are, quote, frontline members who had relatively close elections in 2024. The messages reflect one way special interests shape politics in Washington, where a conforming statement is a metric lobbyists can cite to show their dominance. While not everyone received this bombardment of communication from AIPAC officials, particularly progressives who have made their views about Israel's actions, judging by a substantial portion of House Democrats, the effort appears to be having an effect. We have a large section of traitors among us. And that's the word that needs to be used. They are traitors. And the punishment for treason in our Constitution can include, up to and include, life imprisonment or even the death penalty. And I think taking bribes from a genocidal state doing an illegal war of aggression makes you a traitor, because you are not serving the interests of the United States, and you're not serving the interests of humanity, and you're taking money to do it. That makes you a traitor and a foreign agent.
The COO of Lockheed Martin, Frank St. John, thank you for joining us. Lots to discuss because defense is the topic that is happening right now. And a lot of people are saying defense spending, are we in the beginning stages here, given everything we're seeing, Ukraine, the Middle East, or are we sort of in those middle innings? Where would you say we are?
Hey, Phil, good to see you again. And I would say we are in probably the beginning of a 3 to 5 year surge in defense spending, especially here in Europe. The first couple of years, there was a lot of dialogue and understanding the issue and understanding the demand for deterrence capability. Now we're starting to see those budgets come into play in the European countries, as well as some increases back in the U.S. domestically. So I think for the next 3 to 5 years, budgets are going to be pretty substantial.
Back in the U.S., a lot of people have heard the president talk about the Golden Dome missile defense system. On paper, makes sense. But you know there are more than a few cynics out there saying, now wait a second. Huge country like the United States, could Golden Dome actually work? Give me your perspective in terms of not only can it work, you obviously believe in that, but how quickly could we see a system implemented?
Well, as the world's leader in integrated air and missile defense, Lockheed Martin is really proud to be part of bringing President Trump's vision to pass. And there are a lot of existing capabilities, be it space-based sensing, command and control, surface-based sensing, and effectors that have been proven in conflict over the last several years that are already in existence. The real challenge is scaling that up in quantity and then creating the integration of those separate pieces. And so we definitely think something can be fielded on a rapid pace.
$175 billion. $175 billion. Free college for all costs $60 billion a year. This is basically the same cost as free college tuition. And it doesn't do anything because there's no missile attacks on the U.S. In the last 20 years, China has built 50,000 kilometers of high-speed rail. And they do absolutely make money from it. They didn't just spend the money on high-speed rail and then say, well, that was a grant. They said, okay, we spent this money on high-speed rail. It's debt. The high-speed rail has to pay back that debt. And guess what, chat? China's high-speed rail company is profitable even while paying down the debt. Think about that. They build 50,000 kilometers of the world's best high-speed rail network, and it makes money. The government paying back to itself is profitable. If I take $500 billion as a government and I spend it on infrastructure, and then from the user fees of that infrastructure, I pay back that $500 billion plus more money, that is profitable for society, because you're not even including all the positive externalities that are going into effect. All the new economic activity, all the new businesses, all the connectivity, all the ways society is enhanced in myriad ways. All those positive externalities of having that high-speed rail network are not included in the actual profit and loss statement. So the Chinese, not only do they get all those positive externalities of having a more developed country, they also are literally getting money out of it from users that is paying it back. That is an unbelievable success. It's not like when you build the Golden Dome of America and then what? Rockets sit in silos, and guess what, chat? Rockets go bad. So after 10, 20 years, the rocket is no longer, it expires. So you have to throw it away and build it again. So you get nothing. And if no one ever shoots at you with missiles, you never use this. And so you have $175 billion of debt and nothing for it, which means you have to tax people to pay back the debt, which then you're taking even more money out of society. So it's like taking money and burning it. Meanwhile, they have high-speed rail that's now generating all sorts of new economic activity. Their society is better. The air is cleaner. Because why is the air cleaner? Because they got rid of long-range car trips. They got rid of truck trips. They got rid of bus trips. They got rid of planes. So their carbon emissions are crashing. So their air is getting cleaner. So they have all the positive externalities of that. Sorry, chat. I just wanted the plate out of my desk, which is too small. And they can sustainably tax all that new economic activity to fund new investment. Exactly. And when they invest in new things, they get more positive shit.
The COO of Lockheed Martin.
President Xi is visiting schools. So if you know anything about President Xi, whenever he goes somewhere, is he gives people advice. This is a President Xi classic. Whenever President Xi goes somewhere, he always studies whatever the person does and tries to give them advice. Or this is a Xi classic. He does it almost every time. It's kind of funny, honestly. Okay, I'll read it to you as Rudy says. He says, "Such a big. The size is good. You must pay attention to cleanliness. On the basis, the food should be delicious. Let the children eat nutritious and healthy food." Safety first. Don't hold this. Watch your finger. It will clip your finger. That says G. Protect your eye health.
希望你们有志向，有梦想。30年，有个10岁、40岁，国家栋梁啊，将来，因为你们生长生活过来，看到的就是一个欣欣向荣的中华人民共和国。茁壮成长吧，寄希望于你们这一代。
He's playing with hockey players. I mean, I don't know why you gave me that. Non-Gloria, why did you just give me this? This is random China TikTok. You just wanted me to show Xi being Xi? I think this is the main difference between China and the West. In China, they have hope for the future. Why wouldn't they? Every year in China is better than the last. This is something that people don't know. But since the Communist Party of China took power, there are 600 new cities in China. 600 cities. New cities. China now has a higher life expectancy than we do. Americans are still repeating Ghost Cities propaganda like it's 2003. Yes. The thing about China is they're actually ambitious. They will build an entire new city that they're not planning to open for 5 to 10 years until it's complete. or until like the urban core is functional and they have public transit and stuff like that. And Americans look at that and they go, oh, it must be a scam, because that's how Americans think. Americans look at something and go, that must be a scam, because all America is people scamming each other all day. And it's so funny when you read Western media, China's fast-growing high-speed railway network faces reality. The financial situation of China's high-speed railway network has raised concerns among Chinese commentators, as the facility is facing growing debt and weakening passenger spending power. Since then, Chinese commentators have started debating the matter. Some have said that country should not have extended its high-speed railway to remote places without calculating the costs over the past 2 decades. Others said China's high-speed railway has value as a public facility that connects people in less developed areas to large cities. The company managed to improve its net profit by 10.6% to 12.77 billion yuan in 2024 by sharing its network with other trade operators. It said the most profitable Beijing-Shanghai line will have to spend 20 years recovering its initial investment of 220.9 billion yuan. By the way, 20 years, that's it? That's it? Media reports said that when millions of migrant workers went home during the Spring Festival in late January, many took green-skin trains, leaving the high-speed railway trains underutilized. Now, this is obviously, if you don't know, China also has an extremely robust standard train network, and this is very cheap. The green skin trains are like extremely cheap, whereas high-speed rail is like, you know, $80 or something. China Railways has total liabilities of 6.2 trillion yuan at the end of 2024, up 1.2% from 6.13 trillion yuan a year earlier. Total assets increased 4.4% to 9.76 trillion yuan from 9.35 trillion yuan for the same period. And like, what's actually insane is that you look at this situation, and as with any deployment or any development of a ambitious project, there's going to be places that are less successful than others. But the overall project is more than self-sustaining. How to be a China expert.
How to be a China expert for Western mainstream media. Simple. Criticize everything China does. If China indeed does something good, just add "but at what cost" in the title. A simple phrase could turn any positive thing China does into a negative story. For example, China's economy is doing better than we expected. Ask "but at what cost?" To criticize it may cause unintended consequences. Not as many people died from COVID-19 in China as it was in the US. Ask "but at what cost?" We need to ask why people in China couldn't have the freedom to die like citizens in some Western countries, right? China turned Shenzhen, which was just a fishing village 30 years ago, into a modern, technology-advanced city. We need to ask, China's getting smarter, but at what cost? The intentions of developing technology is very suspicious. The West used to criticize China's air pollution a lot, but now China has fixed it. Ask clean air, but at what cost? To criticize China's assertive policies of solving pollution. Say China bad could easily move you up the ladder in Western mainstream media.
I mean, she's right. She's totally fucking right.
The real question is now, if Donald Trump comes into the picture, then we might face a dramatic...
China's trade update, hold on. Oh yeah, China's trying to develop maglevs.
Deputy Foreign Minister Ravanchi, thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Okay, tell me what is going on. What has been damaged?
Thank you,
How
Toby.
close to your headquarters? What can you tell me exactly about what's happening right now?
We have been witnessing an act of aggression, a clear case of naked aggression against Iran and the Iranian people since 5-6 days ago. We were about to start new round of talks with the Americans on Sunday. That was 15th of June. And 2 days before, we were attacked by the Israelis in the middle of the night. They attacked residential areas. They attacked paramedics. They attacked citizens who are just sleeping in their homes. They attacked our university professors. So this is a crime against humanity. pure and simple.
Okay, so Mr. Ravanchi, they also attacked your military leadership. Your intelligence headquarters, we understand now, has been hit for the domestic control. They've attacked and tried to take out and damage your important nuclear sites, the centrifuge sites, the uranium enrichment sites, and others. They are causing a lot of hardship and damage to your regime. Do you believe that? It seems that from here.
No, as I said, they have been involved in an act of aggression, and they have, martyred our military people as well, along with many Iranian citizens. And they have no boundaries. They attacked everywhere. So you mentioned attacking against our nuclear facilities. These are safeguarded places. It is a crime in accordance with the international law to attack, a place which is safeguarded under IAEA rules. So unfortunately, the Americans and some Europeans have shielded the Israeli regime not to be criticized at the board meeting, Board of Governors, IAEA Board of Governors meeting, and also at the UN Security Council. So it's a shame to all those who are protecting this regime.
Okay, let me get to a few things. Clearly, you must be concerned. You must be worried that more leadership targets will be hit. The supreme leader, your ruler there, Ayatollah Khamenei, the Ayatollah, has come out and said that you will never surrender in response to Donald Trump. But I understand also that things are pretty bad for you and that you have tried to reach out to the US and to Israelis to try to get some kind of negotiation track back on track. Is that true?
No, that's not true. I do not share your assessment. We are not reaching out to anybody. We are defending ourselves. Although we have always promoted diplomacy, but we cannot negotiate under the threats. We cannot negotiate while our people are under bombardment every day. So we are not begging for anything. We are just defending ourselves. And we have an experience of 8 years of war against Saddam's aggression back in the 80s. And now we are defending ourselves against the Israeli regime, which is being helped by Americans, which is being protected by Americans and some others.
As you know, the Israelis are much more sophisticated and powerful than Saddam Hussein ever was. That was some 40 years ago. This is a much bigger order of magnitude. As you know, also, President Trump is publicly weighing whether to join the strikes and whether specifically to hit, for instance, the very deeply buried Fordo facility with the very big bombs. What do you think? What are you reading? Do you think the Americans will get involved? And what would your response be?
We don't know. If the Americans get involved, directly, definitely our hands will not be tied. We will do whatever necessary to protect our people and our interests. The Americans have been collaborating with the Israelis, although they have said it that they do not have anything to do with this conflict, which is not true. But if they decide to be engaged militarily, direct military involvement in this massacre, definitely we will do whatever necessary to protect ourselves. And by the way, Fordo is another protected site based on IAEA rules. So that will be another instance of a crime which is being done, unfortunately, by Israelis and Americans, which is prohibited under international law.
I'm going to get to that in a moment because the Israelis say their intelligence said that you were moving towards weaponization and they had to act now. But I'm going to ask you that in a moment. But first, do you believe that what is happening is regime change targeting or regime destruction targeting? How do you assess the removal of a big layer of military commanders and what President Trump said about Ayatollah Khamenei, that he would be an easy target if they were to decide to take him out? How do you interpret this? Is this about regime change?
I don't know about their intention. Just ask them what the intention is. We will do whatever necessary to protect ourselves. And we have the experience of as I said, 8 years of war during Saddam's era, when everybody was helping Saddam. So you say that you should not compare Saddam and Israeli regime, but do not forget the fact that all the world were behind Saddam at that time, and we were the ones who resisted. And now there is a very strong cohesion within the Iranian society to resist aggression, to resist foreign interference in our domestic affairs. So you ask the people who are in Tehran, ask the embassies, ask the people who live in Tehran these days, and ask the morale of the people, and you will understand that the Iranians are behind their government because they are facing a foreign aggression which will be resisted.
I'm going to get to that in a moment, because you all were very surprised when Assad fell. You didn't know that he was that unpopular with his people, and he fled at the last minute. I'm going to get to that in a moment. But first and foremost, I want to ask about the negotiations.
The Shah's son is still alive, which is crazy to me. That's crazy to me. Like, this is how you know Iran is not that much of a a terroristic state, because pretenders invite wars. Like, if you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what else to say. The idea that this guy's just walking around claiming he has a right to rule the Iranian people by religious fiat or, you know, divine right is fucking insane.
President Trump has apparently told allies and friends that he felt he was being played by the Iranian government, that there was no, willingness or immediate prospect of you agreeing to the conditions of, of a negotiation. He said he gave you 60 days, and on day 61, you still hadn't come. Why? Why didn't you agree to the terms, and do you believe you had a 60-day deadline?
No, nobody can put any deadline on us. When we negotiate something, the two sides have to agree on the timetable of the negotiations. This is point number one. Number two is that we really doubt the sincerity of the Americans in the course of 5 rounds of discussions that we had. We had good discussions, and at the last round, we were given, some document by the foreign minister of Oman. Apparently, both sides felt that that was a good document to be worked on for the next round. Before the next round started, 2 days before the next round started, the aggression took place. So this is a betrayal of diplomacy. This is the betrayal of our trust to Americans. We should be the ones who should criticize the way that we were treated by the Americans, not vice versa. Okay. In fact, no deadline is going to affect our way of negotiations, and then we will do whatever necessary to protect ourselves.
This is obviously a very fluid situation. The Israeli airstrikes continue. America is weighing, or Trump is, whether he will get involved. He's now saying that you, the Iranians, have suggested that you come to the White House to negotiate. He says you're totally defenseless. You have no air defense whatsoever. He says next week will be big. And he says that unconditional surrender means that I've had it. Your reaction?
There is a famous saying that nobody can threaten Iranians. They should not dare to threaten Iran. We will do whatever necessary. Although there are hardships, no doubt about it, but Iranians are known to be very hard at defending their territory, and this is exactly what we are doing.
Did you ask to go to the White House? Has your government asked for access?
Not Christian, not at all. Okay. Not at all. We are not begging for anything. What we are saying is that stop this aggression, then we will have time to do whatever needed. As long as the aggression continues, as long as this brutality continues, we cannot think of engaging.
Okay, so let me ask you this, because it is clear, and we can see it, that a lot of your military capability has been degraded. It is clear. They say that they have control of the skies, and they're even reporting that fewer and fewer missiles are getting into Israel. Even the defense minister is saying that they might, as he says it, release the population to go back to work and to come out of their shelters. But I want to ask you this. Why did you surge production of 60% uranium to the point that you have right now between Trump's inauguration and now. Back then, you had maybe a 5 to 6 weapon capacity if you had decided to. Now, a 10 weapon capacity with these 400 kilos of 60% uranium. Why do
you can't make weapons with 60% uranium? You need 90% uranium. Iran has not produced a nuclear weapon. Nobody says Iran has a nuclear weapon. So if they were wanting to get a nuclear weapon, you have been saying they're going to get it for 30 fucking years. At a certain point, like, they're being bombed anyway, and they don't have a nuclear weapon. So at a certain point, it becomes justifiable because you know who doesn't get bombed? North Korea. North Korea built a nuke. They don't get bombed. If I were Iran, I would have, like, honestly, if you were put into Iran's shoes, you would build a nuke. And that's the problem. Obama had a couple really big achievements during his presidency. By far and away, his biggest achievement was the Iran nuclear deal, where the entire world agreed to help prevent Iran from getting nukes, but allow them to have their own domestic civilian nuclear energy program. China agreed to it. Russia agreed to it. Europe agreed to. Brazil, the United States, India. Everybody was on board with a monitoring system. One of the greatest diplomatic achievements in history. And what did Donald Trump do when he came into office? He ripped it up. And now you're saying, oh, we don't have a deal. I guess we have to bomb them. You broke the deal. And if I'm in a deal with someone where I don't get nukes, but they promise to respect me and not attack and allow me to have domestic energy, and then they break the deal and bomb me, of course I'm going to build a fucking nuke. If I can't trust your word, if I can't trust your treaties, why the fuck wouldn't I get a nuke when you attack me? At this point, it's malpractice not to get a nuke. And that's how we have done it. That's the situation we've created. Look at what happened to Ukraine. Look what happened to Libya. And now look what's happened to Iran. We have created the conditions, geopolitical nuclear proliferation, because of the way we treated countries who gave up their nukes. And who's the global hyperpower? The United States of America. It is our actions that have created the environment for nuclear proliferation.
Did you do that?
You know, we were acting based on our rights within the NPT. We didn't have anything wrong. IAEA inspectors were present in Iran. You know, different reports of IAEA testify the fact that we have been very, straightforward in our nuclear program. So there is no ban on 60% enriched uranium, which are being used, in different places for peaceful purposes. To use that as a pretext to use aggression against Iran.
I do not live in an important city, Iran, but I can still hear air defense system going off at Israeli missiles. Yeah, man, I'm sorry to hear that, dude.
Shamhani is one of the few people in Iran authorized to speak about the sensitive negotiations.
We can definitely have better relations with the U.S.
Shamhani said that Iran is willing.
Apparently 60% isn't deterrence. Apparently 60% isn't deterrence. Nukes are the only deterrent.
To commit to never having a nuclear weapon, to getting rid of its stockpiles of highly enriched uranium, to only enriching to a level needed for civilian use, and to allow inspectors in to oversee it all, in exchange for lifting all sanctions immediately. He said Iran would accept that deal tonight.
We are ready.
Shamhani is one of the few people in Iran.
Wow, it seems like the problem isn't Iran after all. It looks like it was Israel. What a surprise. Israel is the party, the United States is the party that is sabotaging an Iran nuclear deal because they want regime change. They want Iran to have a dictatorship like it did under the Shah, like Saudi Arabia does, like Jordan does, like Egypt does. The United States and Israel want every single Arab person to live under a dictatorship of their choosing, a corrupt dictatorship which cares not for the people, exploits them for the maximum benefit of the United States and Israel. That is the status quo in the Arab world. Iran stands alone out from under of the US's thumb. I don't like the Iranian regime. I don't like the Iranian government. But it's not our business to go around installing people all over the world so we can steal their resources. I'm against that. And that is exactly, that kind of attitude is exactly what led to 9/11, because we created these far right fundamentalist groups to fight leftism, to prevent people allying with the communist bloc, and we've created these evil organizations and evil groups to do our bidding, and it came back around and hit us in the face. The solution is stop doing dirty wars. Stop supporting dictatorships. 60% is the level used for medical uses. Yeah, I know.
Authorized to speak about the sensitive
Okay. All right, I need a little bit of a break. And one of the best ways to get a break is Jordan Klepper Hogwatch. Jordan Klepper crashed Trump's birthday military parade. It's so funny to watch right-wingers try to defend themselves intellectually. It's one of my favorite things to watch.
Growing up in Sunday school, I was taught from the Bible.
Is this interview out yet, chat? I want to watch the whole thing.
Bless Israel will be blessed, and those who curse Israel will be cursed. And from my perspective, I want to be on the blessing side of things.
Those who bless the government of Israel?
Those who bless Israel is what it says. It doesn't say the government of, it says the nation of Israel. So that's in the Bible. As a Christian, I believe that.
Where is that?
I can find it to you. I don't have the scripture off the tip of my... You pull out the phone and use the Google.
It's in Genesis. But so you're quoting a Bible phrase. You don't have context for it and you don't know where in the Bible it is, but that's like your theology? I'm confused. What does that even mean?
Tucker.
I'm a Christian. I want to know what you're talking about.
Okay. Where does my support for Israel come from? Number one, because biblically we're commanded to support Israel. But number two...
Hold on.
I'm not holding on.
Hold on. You're a senator, and now you're throwing out theology, and I am a Christian, and I am allowed to weigh in on this. We are commanded as Christians to support the government of Israel?
We are commanded to support Israel. And what
does that mean, Israel?
We're told those who bless Israel will be blessed.
But what? Hold on. Define Israel. This is important. Are you kidding? This is a majority Christian country.
Define Israel? Do you not know what Israel is? That would be the country you've asked like 49 questions about.
So that's what Genesis, that's what God is talking about.
The nation of Israel, yes.
So is that the current borders, the current leadership? He's talking about the political entity called Israel?
He's talking about the nation of Israel. Yet nations exist, and he's discussing a nation. A nation was the people of Israel.
Is the nation
They're the
God's
descendants of
referring
Abraham.
to in Genesis, is that the same as the country run by Benjamin Netanyahu right now?
Yes.
It is. Okay.
And by the way, it's not run by Benjamin Netanyahu as a dictator. It's a democratic country that elected...
He's the prime minister.
Right.
What?
But just like... America is the country run by Donald Trump. No, actually, the American people elected Donald Trump. The same principle
This is silly. I'm talking about the political entity of modern Israel.
Yes, and that is
You believe
Israel.
That's what God was talking about in Genesis.
I do, but
that country's existed since when?
For thousands of years. Now, there was a time when it didn't exist, and then it was recreated just over 70 years ago.
I'm saying, I think most people understand that line in Genesis to refer to the Jewish people, God's chosen people.
That's not what it says.
Okay, Israel, but you don't even know.
I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. And all the peoples on the earth will be blessed through you. I will bless those who bless you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. What is he talking about? Like, what is he talking about?
Where in the Bible it is.
I had 9 different translations of the Bible up. I had 9 different translations of the Bible up. It doesn't say Israel. He was saying to the Israelites, namely the ancient Jewish people who were a tribe, nations and states didn't exist yet. So nations were a very broad category referring to a tribe or people. And it's specifically talking about a biblical religious account of the migration of this tribe to their homeland. Like this doesn't mean like support Benjamin Netanyahu's genocide of Palestinians. Like what the fuck are you talking about? All right, let's watch the Jordan Klepper thing and then we'll... I think like my main reaction to right-wingers in general is always just, they're not there to have an intellectual exercise. Just like I'm not here to stream unless I get some goddamn subscriptions. What the fuck? You're 4 hours into the stream. I forgot to chill. God damn it. You guys got so lazy because Open Presence was just dropping bombs left and right. And you're like, oh, I don't have to support the stream anymore. Open Presence was dropping a bunch of subs this week. You fuckers. I want all of you to support the stream by subscribing at tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 sub. You have Amazon Prime, you can attach that to your Twitch account, you get 1 free sub a month. Where the fuck are the primes? Where the fuck are the primes? I'm starting a new job next week. I'm good for it. That's what I like to see, chat. Subscribe for, you know, what's your ranking of priorities? Set a budget, set your priorities. Number 1 priority, making the world a better place. Best way to do that. Mike from PA sub, Central Committee sub, right there. Boom. Highest tier you could afford. Then it's food and shelter and healthcare. You know, rank order things. You know, car insurance, that's way down here. I'm poor grad student, but we're getting shit done. Look at this. Look at this. All right, we've got a hyped. Wait a minute. We have a treasure train. Treasure train unlocked. Save 35% on 5 or more gift subs exclusively during this train. All aboard. A treasure train. Well, look at that. Super shill mode. I have no idea what a train. Well, look at that. Chat, if you want to support the stream, now is the time. We have an unbelievably limited time opportunity for a treasure train. Wow. Attack on Titan 81, everyone's Rancor, Kale Kane, and Mikester 96. Thank you all for supporting the stream. I want to keep talking about politics. 2 hours? King of Combat, thank you for the 20. Rare Beastie, thank you for the Prime. And Arch Zeno, thank you for the 5. 2 fucking hours?
Senator, thank you very much for spending the time to have this conversation.
It's good to be with you.
Can we watch a funny Trump clip? Yes.
They call it a lifting. They also use another word, but I'm not going to use that word. You know what that is?
Erect.
It starts with an E. You know what the word is?
Erection.
If I ever used it, I'd be run out of town by you people. All right, so enjoy it. Duck, you're going to get some good. He's going to win another Nobel Prize, I think, for this picture. So maybe the flag will be even more exciting, but this is pretty exciting. That's some equipment, I'll tell you what. Look at that crane. That's some beautiful. Let's have a good, they call it a lifting.
He is so fucking gay, dude. He is such a closeted gay man. I've never seen a more closeted gay man. Do you guys think he knows he's gay? Or is it like he's so delusional? Like every time I see Trump, all I hear is this.
When you know your own name, you see it in popular culture used, you know, and Norm is always
deeply, according to
secret homosexual, do you?
No, I saw that actually. Deeply.
man.
You don't know I'm a secret homosexual, do you?
No, I saw that actually. Deeply, according to you, a deeply closeted homosexual is what you said. Do you remember?
Yes, I do. I can't believe you. Well, I guess the biggest thing that nobody knows about me is I'm a deeply closeted gay man.
What? I mean, that's, you're a gay man?
I'm not gay. I said I'm deeply closeted. I'm as straight as an arrow.
So you're a gay man who won't admit it?
No. Do you know what deeply closeted means?
Yeah.
It means a man who will not acknowledge that he's gay.
Yes.
So I'm telling you, I'm not gay. You know, on your last show, I came out as a deeply closeted gay man.
Yeah.
And I'm not gay. But David, on one time, this is a true story, and Dave, you'll attest to this, bought me a beautiful leather jacket.
Oh, that's right.
Well out of my price range. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm no one to take charity.
I'm not one to take charity.
I'm saying I sucked him off.
What's something people don't know about you?
I'm a deeply closeted gay guy.
No kidding.
Well, I'm not coming out, though.
Wait a minute. What are you revealing here today?
I'm not revealing anything. I'm saying I'm deeply closeted.
Well, that means you're gay. That means you're very, very gay, but you don't want to come out. You're so closeted.
That I refuse to say I'm gay.
Right.
Exactly.
But that... doesn't that mean you're gay?
Hey, easy, buddy.
That's all I see. Whenever Donald Trump is talking, that's all I see. I can't help but think about those jokes because he is so deeply closeted. Like okay. Do you guys remember in the first Trump term there was a woman who would just lip sync Trump shit and she got really famous, Sarah Cooper? You guys remember this? Fry Guy, thank you for the 10. You guys remember this? Sarah Cooper, she like got a whole fucking mainstream career because all she would do was lip sync Trump shit on TikTok. Well, guess what? It's happening again. When I saw it on TikTok, I was so mad. It's not Sarah Cooper anymore. It's a gay man.
This guy, but Arnold Palmer was all man. And I say that in all due respect to women, and I love women. But this guy, this is a guy that was all man. His man was strong and tough. And I refuse to say it, but when he took showers with the other pros, they came out of there, they said, oh my God, that's unbelievable. I had to say it.
So now we have another generation of people that are just doing the lip syncing Trump. But it is really good for my point that Donald Trump is super fucking gay. Hold on.
I'll kiss every guy, man and woman. Look at that guy, how handsome he is. I'll kiss him. Not with a lot of enjoyment, but that's okay. I'll kiss every guy, man and woman. President, he calls me, he used to call me Donald, now he calls me President, so that's nice respect. But he's a rough guy, smart guy. Very successful, very rich. I wouldn't even know how we would know this, but because he's got comments. President, could I ask you a question? What? President, he calls me, he used to call me Donald.
I am not promoting this lib because I don't want to see more of this. But it is true. And I think he's a lot funnier than Sarah Cooper just because he's at least like acting out a character. He's like a much more evolved Sarah Cooper, but it's like, God damn it. Can we just admit, like, this is just liberals admitting that Donald Trump is funny. This is just liberals admitting that Donald Trump is funny. That's why he's president, because he is funny. Now he's gay as fuck, but he is funny. Green Bass Guy, Fry Guy, Arnalda, Undead Wookie, Quazdent, Jules Verne, Anti-Corporatist, Zing Zane, Gramsci's Homegirl. Thank you for the 50 bomb. Can we get a fuck yeah for Gramsci's Homegirl? Everyone bend the knee. DSA knee. The Valiant, thank you for the 5. Arch Zeno, King of Combat with the 20. More bended knees for them. RPG Witch, NRPYX, Mr. Tadpole, Resin Smoker. You're a resin smoker and you're giving me 5 subs? I'm honored. I'm so honored. You have a resin smoker and he's still getting paid for 5 subs. You guys and gals and non-binary pals, you got to show some respect. Because if somebody who's a resin smoker is dropping 5, you could afford 5 subs. Drug addicts got money. Drug addicts for weed? You're going to call someone a drug addict over weed? Stop being so fucking lame. Rat Slasher, thank you. Everyone's Rancor, Kale Kane, Mike Starr. Canadians are sorry with the 10 bomb. Obanya. And then everybody else, if you subbed, resubbed, gifted less than 5, thank you so much. Third Rule and Undead Wookie, thank you both for 5 more. And Slurgo, thank you for 10. I don't want to watch this whole thing, but I do want to watch the part where we could laugh at Ted Cruz.
So you've come out for regime change in Iran, as distinct just from taking out the nuclear sites. What does regime change look like in Iran?
Somebody else in charge.
How do you get there?
Look, that ultimately has to be a popular uprising from the people. And it's not a complicated question. Is America better off with a country that has a leader who hates us and wants to kill us, or to have a country with a leader who likes us and wants to be friends with us? And
definitely the latter's better.
Of course.
Yeah.
And so that's not a complicated statement. Look, I believe you look across the world when you have countries that have dictators that are viciously anti-America. Venezuela, Maduro hates us. Would we be better off with Maduro out of power? Absolutely. I want our enemies out of power, and I want our friends in power.
That I could not.
Is a plaid shirt with a stripe? I mean, I think this looks like shit, personally. What a fucking treasure train. Let's go. Thank you, guys.
not agree more. The question is, how do you get there?
Of course.
And we've been trying to kill Maduro for quite some time. We have troops there, as you know.
I don't know that we've been trying to kill Maduro.
We have. And I think you know that. And
I don't know that.
Okay, well, as a statement of fact, we have. So
we do have massive sanctions. We tried to pressure him out of office.
Yeah,
I'm
there's all kinds
not
of
aware
stuff.
of efforts.
I'm just saying there's a lot of pressure coming from various parts of the U.S. government on that government, and it's still there.
Yeah.
Same, the country of our ancestors, Cuba, 1959, we've been working on that. Hasn't worked. So it's I think we both agree it's hard to do.
It absolutely is hard. And look, I think you're reasonable to ask, how do we produce that? And I think there's a distinction between what your objective is and the means to get it. There are all sorts of things I would say we would be better off. We'd be better off in China without Xi there. Should we invade China and topple Xi? Of course not.
Better off with no national debt.
There are lots of things.
Totally.
But it's good to say, all right, what are our objectives?
Right.
And so with the Ayatollah in Iran, saying you're for regime change, I don't view as complicated. I mean, the guy literally leads mobs chanting death to America. So that's not good.
Definitely not good. But the reason I think it's important to get a little more detailed about how that might happen is because there's military action in progress, which we're supporting. And the president has said clearly, including last night, that he is focused on eliminating the capacity of the Iranian government to produce nuclear weapons. You are saying we need to use military force to effect regime change.
I have not said that.
Oh, I must have.
No, I have not said that once.
Okay.
I don't think we need to use military force to do regime change. I said I support it. I would like to see it happen. You asked me how should it happen? A popular uprising. What I've advocated for. All right, let's step back a second. You and I, we've known each other a long time. I would say we agree on about 80% of the things on Earth.
For sure.
And there are a lot of things, and we can get into the nitty-gritty of foreign policy as much as you want. There are a lot of things on which you and I agree, not just a little bit, but violently.
Well, I totally agree. I was rooting for you in your last campaign, for sure.
Well, thank you. Look, you have been heroic on the border. You've been one of the clearest and best voices in the whole country on securing the border and on the absolute crisis we're facing. And in Texas, I see it and live it every day. In COVID, in fact, you may recall, in the middle of the COVID lockdown, I was out walking my dog when the whole world was shut down and we were living in lunatic times. And I called you and said, Tucker, your nightly monologues are the single best thing on television. Like I watch them like an injection of crack. Okay, I'm mixing my metaphor because you don't inject crack, but you get what I'm saying.
Try.
No, I mean, you were standing up and speaking like, what the hell are we doing, in a way that we desperately, desperately needed. And so whether it's security.
Ted Cruz is a born sycophant. He's a born sycophant, a born greasy fucking loser.
During the border, whether it's the insanity of COVID lockdowns and the vaccine mandates, whether it is the Second Amendment or the First Amendment, you and I agree on a ton of stuff. The 20% where we disagree, I do think is meaningful. And it's mostly in the foreign policy space. And what I would say, if you'll allow me to get a little theoretical, and then I'm happy to get specific.
Yes.
For a long time, people have perceived two different poles of Republican foreign policy. There have been interventionists, and those have been people like John McCain and Lindsey Graham, George W. Bush. And there have been isolationists. And the most prominent of those have been Ron Paul and Rand Paul, and there are others. And people perceive those are the two choices. You got to be one or the other. I've always thought both were wrong. I don't agree with either one. The way I view my own foreign policy.
I'm with you, by the way, for whatever it's worth. I agree with you.
Okay, good.
I don't know who set up that binary, but there are lots of choices, actually.
I mean, people sort of naturally fall into, I think they want to classify people, and they're like, okay, you're one or the other, and you got to be all or nothing. And the interventionists, it seems, have never seen a country they didn't want to invade, and that doesn't make any sense to me. And the isolationists, I think, don't take the threats to America seriously, and I think that's naive, and it doesn't work. And so my view, I consider myself a third point on the triangle. And what I describe that as is that I am a non-interventionist hawk, which sounds a little weird, but what do I mean by that? I mean the central touch point for U.S. foreign policy and for any question of military intervention should be the vital national security interest of the United States. How does this make America safer? How does this protect Americans? If it does, we should be strong. And actually, another way of conceiving what I'm saying, I'm speaking theoretically, But Reagan referred to it as peace through strength. And actually, I think Donald Trump's foreign policy is very much what I'm describing, a non-interventionist hawk, where he understands that, and I think this is historically true, the best way to avoid war is being strong. That weakness and isolationism, I think, encourages war. Going back...
Guys, war is peace. Like, this is the delusion of the neocon. And you would think after 20 years of abject failure, any good faith person would be like, this is obviously wrong. And every good faith person is that. Even Donald Trump acted like that for a while. Now, Ted Cruz is a George W. Bush neocon. And so the idea that we're going to have a more peaceful life if we attack everybody constantly in our nonstop wars, which we have been since 1941, is madness. Now, he just doesn't give a shit about reality because he's in the pockets of AIPAC and he's in the pockets of the defense industry, and they profit when there's more war.
Back to regime change, where you started in Iran.
Just to make, I don't think I disagree with anything you've said, so we may not be that far apart, really, because you said that the single criterion for making decisions about America's foreign policy is America's national interest.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah. Which is also America first. That's another way of putting that as well.
I think it's the definition of it.
Yeah.
It's hardly breaking news. The U.S. dollar has been gravely... That's where...
President.
.com.
You said...
.com to start.
The question is, are we watching that now?
So I think we are. And from what you've said publicly, I think on Iran in particular, you and I disagree. And all right, let me contrast it when Obama was president. When Obama was president...
He's a true believer in the evangelical nutcasery. No, he's not. Ted Cruz is not a true believer in anything. He's a nihilist. And he saw the evangelical base as the person that was his ladder to power. He doesn't believe in God. He doesn't believe in God.
President, you remember he talked about wanting to have military action against Syria.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I tried to keep an open mind to it. I said, okay, let me listen to the commander-in-chief, describe to me how this is in America's interest and what your plan is. And Bashar Assad was a bad guy. He was killing his own citizens, and he had chemical weapons that were very dangerous. I could conceive of a commander-in-chief laying out a plan for, okay, we're going to go in and say, grab the chemical weapons and leave. Like, I could see that if there was a real threat to America and there was a plan to prevent that, I could see supporting that. So I wanted to hear what he had to say. And I listened both in classified briefings and public questioning. And number one, their public defense of it was incoherent. So John Kerry said, we're going to engage in an unbelievably small strike. I think that's a quote. I'm like, okay, and to do what? At the time, there were 9 major rebel Islamic groups in Syria. I'm like, okay, I agree, Bashar Assad's a bad guy. You topple him. And one of the 9 other groups takes over. 7 of them were affiliated with radical Islamic terrorism. You had Al-Qaeda and Al-Nusra. I'm like, wait, how is it better to have lunatics who hate us in charge? Assad's a bad guy, but I don't want worse guys in charge. Obama administration couldn't give an answer to that. And ultimately, when you press them, John Kerry in particular, I pressed, and he would say, well, we need to defend international norms. Like, what the hell's an international norm? I don't know what it is, but I'm not interested in putting U.S. servicemen and women in harm's way to defend one.
Amen.
So I opposed the Syria attack and opposed it vocally. And it was interesting. Rand and I agreed. Rand's a friend of mine. But we agreed with that position for different reasons. What I was asking is I think the question we should ask, how does this make America safer? The Obama administration couldn't give me an answer, so I opposed it. I think Iran is very different.
Let me ask what you think of how Syria wound up, because Bashar al-Assad now lives in Moscow.
Yeah.
He was taken out by our allies, and he's been replaced by a radical Islamist who was affiliated with ISIS. So is that a win or no?
Unclear. Look, Syria's a mess, so I've consistently opposed.
But we had a secular leader in a religious and ethnically diverse country. Now we have a religious extremist, Islamic religious extremist, who's overseen the purge of Christians and Alawites. Is that better? That doesn't seem like a win.
One of the things you said is he was taking...
Well, it serves the interests of Israel. Israel now has Syria a dissolved basket case, so they can carve chunks off of it for their settler project, and they could spread radical Islamist politics all throughout the Middle East and murder and kill any leftist. So that's a good win. That's a W for Ted Cruz.
Taken out by our allies. I don't think that's right. Israel didn't take Assad out. What happened, and I'll tell you.
What about Turkey?
Turkey didn't take him out. So it was interesting. I had a long...
How did Assad get kicked out?
Yeah. When Netanyahu was in D.C. a couple of months ago, he and I sat down for a couple of hours. He's a good friend of mine. And we talked actually about Syria. He made an interesting point that I've not heard anywhere else, in that he said he believes what toppled Assad was when Israel took out Nasrallah. Nasrallah was the head of Hezbollah, and they took him out. And he made an interesting point. He said it's fascinating how a charismatic leader, and Bibi said, look, Nasrallah was a very effective terrorist leader. And when they took him out, that...
By the way, the reason why they call him a charismatic and effective leader and intelligent is because they can't really dispute what he said. They can't dispute the facts of what he said. So they'll just cover it up with this kind of like backhanded compliment.
Power base was supporting Assad. And that ultimately, in Bibi's analysis, removed the support from Assad and toppled him. But they weren't trying to take out Assad. My view now, I don't know.
So you don't think that, and I don't, it is very confusing, and I don't know that anyone really knows all the details, but you don't think that Israel or Turkey, our NATO ally Turkey, played any role in toppling Assad?
I don't know. I don't know that they did. Look, my understanding of that, they clearly took out Nasrallah and Hezbollah. They've decimated Hezbollah, but Hezbollah was waging war on them. So decimating Hezbollah was very good for Israel and very good for America, too. I mean, Hezbollah hated us. I would put Assad in the category of an unintended consequence, and whether it's good or bad, I don't know. I think time will tell.
For the United States.
Yeah, for the United States. I think time will tell the new leadership there. You're right to be concerned. Let me step back and let's talk regime change generally. I mentioned Syria. I also oppose the Iraq War. I think the Iraq War was a serious mistake. And we have a pattern, and going back to this binary of the interventionist and the isolationist. The interventionists advocate over and over again, there's a bad guy, there's a dictator who's doing bad things to his people, and they say, let's go topple him. And you have dictators in the Middle East who are killing radical Islamic terrorists. We come in and topple them. The radical Islamic terrorists take over, and they start killing Americans. In my view, how the heck does that help us? Saddam Hussein was a horrible human being. He murdered and tortured people. Unequivocally bad guy. But it got much worse after we toppled him. And you ended up having ISIS rise up.
Right, but now you're still in... Now you want another one?
I mean, that was the cause of ISIS, was toppling Saddam Hussein. Same thing in Libya. You had Gaddafi and other...
By the way, chat, Pakistan illegally procured nuclear weapons, violated non-proliferation, and they're our ally. Israel stole nuclear material and technology from the United States' stores. They literally had spies steal our nuclear fucking material to make their nukes, which they have never publicly acknowledged. We have given them $330 billion. We do not have an anti-proliferation belief. We only believe in certain nations that we're trying to control not having nukes. Nations which we have been the aggressor against for decades. And so why am I, quote, anti-America on this issue? Because I don't think attacking a nation of 90 million people is a good idea for world peace.
A horrible guy that under Obama, we toppled him. And you ended up having radical Islamic warlords taking over. And so it's the question I asked in Syria. Okay, well, what's the plan? And how is this good or bad for the United States? And so I don't think... With Iran, I view Iran as very different from Iraq.
But up to that point, you say we disagree. I don't hear really anything. I'm not quite sure what happened in Syria, but I don't know. So, right. But other than that, I don't hear anything I disagree with at all.
Yeah.
Sounds like we're in a complete agreement. I wonder, though, is there a successful regime change that the United States supported that you're aware of in the last 100 years?
Sure. Defeating the Soviet Union and the Soviet Union collapsing, winning the Cold War. That was the most consequential step for U.S. national security interests of our lifetimes.
Okay.
And
so you would classify that as a regime change that we affected?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Look, you and I are in my office. We're sitting next to a painting of Reagan in front of the Brandenburg Gate. And up top are the words, tear down this wall, in German. in the style of the graffiti.
Right.
And I think those are the most important words any leader has said in modern times. And if you look at how Reagan waged the Cold War, and Reagan is very much my model for how to, I actually think how Reagan took on the Soviet Union is exactly how we should take on China. Starting from the point, look, Reagan was not an interventionist. In 8 years, the biggest country Reagan ever invaded was Grenada. He was very reluctant to use U.S. military force.
He didn't respond after the 83 barracks bombings.
You're right. Yeah, he made the judgment that the risk exceeded the benefits. And that's a very rational decision to make. And it's reflected, Trump has made those same decisions where he is willing to use military force, but he very much asks, okay, is this good or bad for America? Does this endanger U.S. servicemen and women or not? And one of the points about the Cold War, look, nobody in their right mind wanted a shooting war between America and the Soviet Union. The two biggest nuclear powers on Earth firing bullets at each other is really unhealthy for human beings. Same thing is true with China. Nobody with any sense says, hey, let's go to war with China. That's really dumb, and a whole lot of people could die. But the Cold War...
But you were trying to put a noose around their necks, and you don't expect them to react, to cut it off? It's very funny to be like, oh, we don't want to fight a war with China. That would be madness. And then create the conditions for war with China.
The war showed we've got lots of tools short of sending the Marines to fight against a regime. And one of the most important tools is the bully pulpit. And so when I say I support regime change, I actually think just simply laying out what the Ayatollah does. And so I spend a lot of time, I speak to Iranian dissident groups. I speak out against human rights abuses. I think shining a light on the depravity of leaders is a really powerful tool that America has.
Should we limit our activity to that?
It depends. Again,
because the U.S. government pays opposition groups, militarized opposition groups in Iran to overthrow the government. We've done that in a lot of different places, as you know. I'm not saying it's bad, but that's very different from what you're describing. You're saying we're making a moral case, as we did for 7 years with the Soviets. Our system works, yours doesn't.
Yep.
And I think we made a credible case for that. And we beat them over 70 years economically.
And that was a huge part of it.
Right. I think everyone would agree that was the main part of it. We didn't beat them in Vietnam or North Korea.
The main part of it, but it was tied to a military buildup. So I think it was two things. It was, one, the clarity. So Reagan came in and he described the Soviet Union as an evil empire.
Right.
And all of the intelligentsia in D.C., all the Democrats, all the media, they're like, what a horrible thing to say. You can't say that. Reagan went to the United Kingdom and he said, Marxism, Leninism will end up on the ash heap of history. People were horrified. They asked him, all right, what's your strategy in the Cold War? He said, very simple. We win, they lose. And that was all viewed as...
By the way, chat, if you're satisfied that by that kind of answer, you're a fucking subhuman. We win, they lose.
Sort of a Philistine simplicity. And I think it was exactly right. And laying that out, speaking... Do you know the backstory behind the Berlin Wall speech?
Yeah, I do. Yes.
You probably know Peter Robinson, who was the speechwriter.
Yes.
So 3 times the State Department deleted those words from that speech. And 3 times Reagan wrote it back. And the State Department argued, they said, Mr. President, you can't say this. This is too bellicose. This is too provocative. And my favorite, they said, this is too unrealistic. The Berlin Wall will stand till the end of time. And Reagan said, look, this is the whole point of the speech. And less than 3 years after Reagan gave that speech, the Berlin Wall was torn to the ground. And it wasn't knocked down by American Army tanks. We didn't shoot missiles at it. It was shining truth and light that tore it down. It was also...
It was the corrupt incompetence of a buffoon who rose to the leadership in the USSR because they lacked... And it was a political crisis which was devastating to everybody in Eastern Europe, let alone the Soviet Union. And it took 25 years to crawl out of the enormity of the error. And in many ways, they haven't to this day.
Rebuilding the American military, it was what was then pejoratively called Star Wars, where the Soviet Union, their economy couldn't match our military buildup, and it bankrupted them. That's an example of peace through strength.
I wonder, I mean, is there anybody who was alive in 1989 who wouldn't trade that America for the one we live in now? There's not one person, I don't think.
Oh, sure.
But, I mean, just the basic metrics, debt, suicide rate, life expectancy, it was I wonder why, after that victory, America didn't thrive in the way that we thought that it would, that I thought that it would. My family was involved in that. I mean, we were very focused on it in my house. Like, we won. And I wonder two things. Why didn't the United States kind of declare victory and make some sort of arrangement with Russia that allowed like mutual prosperity rather than continuing a Cold War? And second, I wonder why the United States didn't get a lot better. Like, why don't we have better infrastructure? Why don't we have fewer homeless? Why do we have all these drugs? Like, if we won, why does our country look like this? I walked across from Union Station this morning, as you do, I'm sure, every day. And all these people lying in the street and sleeping outside. It's like, what is that?
We're sorry to say it, but this is not a very...
And by the way, Ted Cruz's answer is to kill homeless people. His answer is to kill those people. That's his answer, in case you're wondering. Or in prison and enslave.
Can't be arrested for defending yourself with a Byrna pistol. Visit Byrna, BYRNA.com, or your local Sportsman's Warehouse to get yours today. Byrna.com.
Look, there's no doubt there are really dangerous forces in our society. Some of it is politics and some of it is culture. And one of the mistakes people make in politics is thinking everything is politics. So the political answer, which I have...
Notice, chat, that the right-wingers like, oh, yeah, that's not politics.
To believe is we went much further down the road of liberalism. You look at Bill Clinton, who inherited the peace dividend of the Cold War being over and moved us more to the left, and then Obama...
What? I mean, this is just nonsensical claptrap. It's total bullshit. It's total bullshit. It's complete and utter bullshit. And because Tucker Carlson is just as much of a fraud as Ted Cruz, they can't have a real conversation.
Accelerated it a lot. So there are lots of bad economic policies, but I also think they're cultural things. You know, the loss of faith,
I agree with all of
family.
That. I know what you're going to say, and I agree 100%. I bet there's not one word that I would disagree with. All I'm saying is, like, I think it's important to step back and ask.
But I actually think Russia has very little to do with it. So,
well, that's kind of the point that I'm trying to make, which is, like, we're all sort of focused on beating our adversaries abroad, but what is victory worth if our own country becomes what it is now? And maybe we're spending a little too much time focused abroad and not enough time focused on the people sleeping outside Union Station.
So, look, I absolutely think we need to focus at home emphatically, and we need to focus on prosperity. We need to focus on reducing the debt, reducing spending, empowering people, low taxes, small businesses. American free enterprise. It's the most powerful force for fighting poverty the world has ever seen.
Except, no, the most powerful force for fighting poverty is the Communist Party of China.
1,000% there. I also recognize it is a dangerous world, and part of the responsibility of leaders, part of President Trump's responsibility, is to keep America safe. Let's go back to where we started.
But can I ask, you've been in the district a long time in D.C., so have I, and the city's way more dangerous, and Congress runs this city.
No, it's a complete crap hole.
So I'm saying, like, no Iranian's ever going to kill me, but I could get carjacked here. And I just don't understand how the Congress could run this city and focus on the dangers of Iran when the city is like garbage. It's garbage.
But Congress doesn't run the city. We could.
Congress does run the city. It's in the Constitution.
It's in the Constitution, but they've given home rule, so it's a Democrat mayor who runs it.
You control the Congress.
I'd vote for it, but it is a question of math.
I asked Google's AI, is the Communist Party of China the most effective poverty fighter of all time? Yes. Several sources suggest that the Communist Party of China has overseen the most effective poverty reduction efforts in history, lifting a significant number of people out of extreme poverty. Here's why this claim is made. Scale and speed. China's economic transformation and poverty reduction over the past 4 decades are described as historically unprecedented, both in speed and scale. Millions lifted. Between 1978 and 2019, the proportion of people living in poverty, according to the national standard, fell from 97.5% to 0.6% of the rural population, resulting in 765 million fewer poorer people. The World Bank reports that almost 800 million people were lifted out of poverty during this period. Global contribution. China's poverty reduction efforts are credited with contributing close to 3/4 of global reduction in the number of people living in extreme poverty. Government commitment and targeted policies. The Communist Party of China has prioritized poverty alleviation, implementing strategies like targeted poverty relief to deliver aid and resources directly to impoverished areas and households. This included significant financial investments and mobilization of personnel. Economic growth. Rapid economic growth has been a key driver of poverty reduction, leading to increased incomes and improved living standards. Infrastructure development. Improvements in infrastructure, including roads, railways, electricity, telecommunications, have boosted socioeconomic development in poor regions and facilitated the flow of resources and opportunities. Improved social services. The CPC has also focused on improving education, healthcare, and social security in impoverished areas. There have downsides. Data integrity. There have been questions raised about accuracy and integrity of official government data regarding poverty reduction. Wow, guys. Questions raised. I guess it's over. While China's achievements are lauded, questions have been raised about the long-term sustainability and cost effectiveness of their approach. But at what cost? But at what cost? Some argue that China's poverty alleviation efforts have come at the cost of diminished ecological advantages in certain areas and persistent challenges in education and healthcare. Oh, not poverty. I'm misspelling things too. It's okay. Let's see here. China's war on pollution. Evidence from first 5 years. The decade from 2010 to 2019 marked a significant turning point in China's approach to environmental regulation and pollution. All right, hold on. Wait, here it is. China's war against pollution, extraordinarily successful, University of Chicago researcher. China's air pollution reductions account for more than 3/4 of the global decline in pollution since 2013. So 3/4 of the poverty reduction and 3/4 of the pollution reduction. Okay. Looks like they did it. All right, chat. I would like to send you guys. I want to build up your energy because Zohran is such a cool motherfucking guy. We love him so much. Here he is defending globalize the intifada. What a fucking king. And he did it on the dumb neoliberal bulwark anti-Trump Republican podcast. What a fucking king.
I am someone who I would say am less comfortable with the idea of banning the use of certain words, and that I think it is more evocative of a Trump-style approach to how to lead a country. And I think especially when we've seen...
Sure, but like, does that just make you uncomfortable? Like the phrase globalized intifada, from the river to the sea, does that make you uncomfortable? Or do you think...
Okay, those are different. Those are super different.
They're not really.
Like...
They're really not different. They're really not different at all. They mean the same thing, which is we've got to have an uprising against fascism and genocide. And if you believe a genocide is going on, then there needs to be an uprising by any means necessary to stop it. And if you're going to sit here from America in comfort, then you have an obligation to do everything you can to stop it. You fucking scum, centrist piece of shit. This is why Zohran's different than me. He's nice.
Different genres.
I'm sorry, I'm asking Zohran. Then they're not really different to me. And to some people, they're not different.
You know, I know people for whom those things mean very different things. And to me, ultimately, what I hear in so many is a desperate desire for equality and equal rights in standing up for Palestinian human rights. And I think what's difficult also is that the very word has been used by the Holocaust Museum when translating the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising into Arabic, because it's a word that means struggle.
Sure.
And as a Muslim man who grew up post 9/11, I'm all too familiar in the way in which Arabic words can be twisted, can be distorted, can be used to justify any kind of meaning.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it leaves me with a sense that what we need to do is focus on keeping Jewish New Yorkers safe, and the question of the permissibility of language is something that I haven't.
And like every leftist is going to be called an anti-Semite by Zionists forever and ever. If you engage in the anti-Semite crap in 2025, you're a fucking dope, or you're on their side, the side of Zionism over actually hating anti-Semitism. I focus extensively on hating anti-Semitism and protecting Jewish people. But if you're out there calling someone anti-Semitic because they oppose Israel, you're a fucking fraud. And there is not a problem with anti-Semitism on the left. anti-Semites are immediately fucking thrown out of the left. There is not a problem with anti-Semitism on the left. It's a blatant lie. It's a ridiculous lie. The anti-Semites in this country are on the far right, as they always are.
Opportunity that there is no room for anti-Semitism in this city, in this country. And I've said that because that is something I personally believe. And ultimately, to your question of why not a more visceral reaction, part of it has been colored by the fact that when I speak, especially when I speak with emotion, I am then characterized by those same rivals as being a monster, as being at the gates, language that describes almost a barbarian looking to dismantle civilization. And part of this is the very sad burden of what it means to be the first Muslim candidate to run for mayor, is to deal with dehumanizing language, to deal with a former governor who doesn't even view Muslims as being a part of this city sufficient that he would visit a mosque in the more than 10 years. And it pains me to be called an anti-Semite. It pains me to be painted as if I am somehow in opposition to the very Jewish New Yorkers that I know and love and that are such a key part of this city. And yet I know that when I share that emotion, I continue to face a language as if I am a beast. And it takes a toll to wake up in the morning and read messages that say things like, I get messages that say the only good Muslim is a dead Muslim. I get threats on my life. On the people that I love. And I try not to talk about it. Because the function of racism, as Toni Morrison said, is distraction. My focus has always been on making this a city that's affordable, on making this a city that every New Yorker sees themselves in. And it takes a toll, because this is a city that every single person deserves to be in. It's a city that we all belong to. And the thing that's made me proudest in this campaign is that the strength of our movement is built on our ability to have built something across Jewish and Muslim New Yorkers, across New Yorkers of all faiths and all backgrounds and all boroughs. And anti-Semitism is such a real issue in this city, and it has been hard to see it weaponized by candidates who do not seem to have any sincere interest in tackling it, but rather in using it as a pretext to make political points. And that's what I've tried to share. Thank you so much.
What a cool guy. We love him.
This is the club that was the beginning of my political journey. And I can even say in our own club, we've had debates and discussions as to how far do we want to go out on BDS? How far do we want to go out on what we ask on Palestine? And I think too often we have made the mistake of towing a very small line, a line that's akin to the ACLU, where we ask people, are you okay to not criminalize those who participate in BDS? And I think that we have to go far beyond that. I think that what we need to do is ask people, will you support BDS? And frankly, not ask them, but demand that you must do this. And that if you do not, then that is not enough. Because if we, as progressive Muslims, are willing to compromise on a request, then how can we ask anything more of those who are even less connected to what this fight is? So I think that for MDCNY, for us as Muslims in New York, for us who are fighting for justice, we have to be very clear as to what we want. And we have to be unrepenting in our demand for it. And if some candidates refuse to do that, okay, that's fine. We can't start to make compromises before we even get to the negotiating table. And we will find that courage is contagious. And when you start to speak out and you start to create a new line in the sand, people will start to toe it that you might not have thought would ever give you the time of day, because now they'll see consequence on the other side. Typically in this issue, speaking up for Palestine has no benefits. Speaking up for Israel comes with everything you might want. And we need to show that it's not that way anymore. There are consequences for speaking up in favor of apartheid. There are consequences for being silent on the issue of justice. And you'll see those consequences in a lack of endorsement. You'll see those consequences when people who speak up for justice get door knocks, get support, get donations, get everything that we can provide to candidates, because as we said, it cannot be considered an optional struggle. It has to be considered one that is make or break for us to get involved in races and for us to believe in candidates.
I've said this many times with Zohran Mamdani. It's Mamdani, chat. Get it right. Zohran Mamdani. I've said this time and time again about him, which is there is a difference between an opportunist and a sympathizer. And Zohran is very clearly one of us. This isn't a compromise. He is one of us. And if that doesn't make you excited, if you're not going to get involved in this fight, when you have the opportunity for America's largest city to be run by a charismatic left-winger, an anti-Zionist, then why do you even talk about politics? Why are you even here? Yeah, he's not going to deliver everything that I want, but it's about creating a space for politics of liberation and showing that our generation will get off its fucking ass for it. If you're not going to be part of this solution, then stop being part of the problem. And with that, chat, I'm going to call it a day. Thank you so much for hanging out. I have a video that we produced from yesterday that I want to please suggest that you all go watch. So come, brothers and sisters. Zohran Mamdani's secret housing video exposed. Get in there, like, comment, subscribe. We went all in with the thumbnail. We've got ourselves a really, really funny thumbnail. Zohran, you only get a few of these socialism. So make sure you get in there. If you see my videos in your For You page, make sure you get in there. You hit the view, you hit the like button, you share it, you subscribe. All right, everybody, stay safe out there. Here's all my links. I really do appreciate all of you. Have a wonderful day. One of my better thumbs. I love it. And I'll see you all very, very soon. Peace.